Okay, good evening, everybody. This is a virtual meeting of the Town of Greenwich Planning and Zoning Commission being held pursuant to the governor's executive orders. This evening, we have two items postponed. Item number 5, which is Shirley and Ho Kai Wen at 2 Vista Drive for a final coastal site plan and special permit. And number 6, Joel P. Berger et al. For a final site plan and special permit at 280 Railroad Avenue. In addition, I will be recusing myself on item number 7, Miller Partners 321 for a final site plan and special permit at 321 West Putnam Avenue, and Mr. Yeski will be seated for me. Thank you very much. And with that, we begin with item number 1, which is a discussion item from Renamba Greenwich LLC at 0 Old Track Road to discuss a proposed assisted living facility. Who will be speaking for the applicant?
Mr. Cohen, I believe.
And looking for Mr. Cohen. Do you see
He's
him?
added. I'm sorry, Madam Chair. He's been added.
Got to take his mic off.
I just did that.
Hello?
Yes, hello, Mr. Cohen.
Here we are.
Good evening, Ms. Sullivan. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. I'm Bruce Cohen and I represent the applicant. And thank you for reviewing this item again. This is your last review on July 14th. This is, as you know, a pre-application based on the Connecticut statute, section 6149B. And as everybody knows, it's non-binding, but very important because it will give the applicants guidance as to whether or not we proceed to present a site plan special permit application. At the meeting that was held on July the 14th, a number of recommendations were made in terms of the language and approach of the assisted living facility regulation, which we have adopted. It's now known as the Managed Residential Community Regulation to conform to the state statute and to other similar regulations in other towns. There have been some revisions to the plan itself, which the project engineer, Brad Perkins, will review with you. I hope everybody is listening to this now. But based upon the briefing session that we listened in on yesterday, clearly the commission had one important issue to address, and whether or not an elderly project is permitted under the new regulation would justify an FAR bonus of 0.9, or as otherwise stated yesterday, what in the applicant's business model requires increased development density that couldn't be achieved by raising our prices. So we'll be more specific about responding to that, and I'm going to do it this evening. As you know, the need for market rate assisted living facilities is recognized by the town. It's been recognized in reports issued by the Commission on Aging. It's recognized in our POCD, which specifically provides as a planning objective to ensure that residents have more options to age in place. And we know that the town has addressed this issue from the point of view of affordable units, because nearly 40 years ago, the Planning and Zoning Commission enacted the RPHDE zone, which has successfully provided affordable housing for seniors. There have been, and we provided with our application, a detailed list of all of the projects with the E designation that have been approved and have been successfully developed in town. To give you a quick idea, just to recall what's gone on in the past, under that regulation, 150 units have been developed at Agnes Morley on 2.9 acres. At the merry-go-round Muse in downtown Greenwich, 86 units have been developed on a little over half an acre. At the Bishop Curtis houses next to St. Catherine's Church, 33 units have been developed on something less than 1 acre. So it's not affordability that we're looking for. It's really to provide the need that has been recognized in town. And to deal with the issue that the commission has recognized in advance, which is what about our plans prevent us from handling any shortfall by just raising our prices. Let me go into more detail than we had in the past on what our business model is. Fortunately, the applicant has developed a senior facility in Scarsdale, known as the Ambassador, very much like the one that's being planned for Old Track Road. And so we're in a position to be able to give you some information about the business model that's fairly accurate and has worked in the past. To begin with, as part of our business model, the Ambassador development is not a for sale development in which the developer builds, develops, and quickly recoups his investment by selling units or by dealing with a buy-in feature in their agreements, and then assigns management obligations to a separate company. In the case of the Ambassador that's being proposed, the developer is intending to build and develop the housing, and then to continue to manage the facility as they've done at Scarsdale. Based upon the experience in Scarsdale, we know or have a pretty good idea of what our proposed senior population is going to be. There are at the Scarsdale facility 130 residents, of which 62 are over 90 years of age and 116 are over 80 years of age. And so there's less interest in that population to purchasing than there is to dealing on a monthly fee basis. And that is part of our business model. It will be intended that the developer, if he's permitted to proceed, will develop this property, not sell out, but continue to manage, and then deal with occupants on the basis of a monthly fee. The next important part of our business model is that we are going to provide what I believe was correctly referred to at the briefing as luxury units, based not only on amenities and finishes, but more significantly based on staffing, not only to meet the fairly rigorous requirements of the Connecticut statute and regulation, but also to provide a very high quality of a living experience, and therefore to encourage the goal that we recognize, I believe the town has recognized, of encouraging aging in place for all parts of our community as they age. As a model, we can tell you that at Scarsdale, the applicant employs 154 staff members, a lot more than most assisted living facilities. Payroll is over $7 million a year, and the Greenwich payroll, when still fully staffed, will be in excess of that. Into facilities and amenities that must be provided for in an assisted living facility, without regard to the number of units there are at the facility. A number of management positions at that facility will be engaged and stay in place. For example, we must have an executive director, directors of culinary services, clinical services, memory care, rehab and PT, and housekeeping services. And in addition, there are 2 nurses that are always available at the facility. That staffing and the many others that will be engaged will represent what the applicant must have in order to build the kind of facility we're talking about. To construct and finish the proposed project without it getting into too many financial details, which I know you're not asking for, the applicant anticipates a complete budget of over $80 million to build and fit up this facility, which includes a land cost for 2.5 acres of over $11.5 million. The monthly fee to residents is the
I'm
only way
I'm sorry, what did you say your land cost was for the 2 acres?
over $11.5 million. It's 2.5 acres. It's in the GB zone. This is the monthly fee that will be charged to residents is the only way that a developer can recoup his investment and attempt to realize a return on it. So the question comes.
Oh, I'm
Given
sorry,
all
Mr.
of-
Cohen, Mr. Cohen, in most assisted living facilities, it isn't just a monthly fee. Then every time somebody does something for the resident, you pay for that. So if your mom gets pills, you pay for the time that you pay for her getting the pills. And if they have to shower her, you pay for her being showered. Every single activity, every single piece of assistance that's given residents is normally, from everybody I've talked to that's had family in these facilities, you pay for stuff. So I'm confused that you're not going to be charging for the services you offer, because that's not the model that I've experienced from any of my peers.
I don't know what those charges are. Mr.
It
Shawn
usually-
is
Okay, usually
listening in and
okay. So the model that
Any
I'm
question?
familiar with in assisted living is that you pay for the services individually. Each service is paid for. Anything above the basic care.
I'm sure there are basic charges, but the first charge, the basic charge, the one that the developer and manager can rely on is the monthly income. So if there are additional charges, that may very well be the case, and I wouldn't be surprised if it were. But I'm telling you how the basic business model works. The basic business model is not, in this case, to sell out or to sell units or charge a buy-in fee, but to base your investment upon the monthly charges that are incurred by each of the residents. That's what we have to rely on, without regard to the number of units. If the number of units were reduced, as was suggested during yesterday's hearing, we face a situation of the market. And there are competing, as you know, Ms. Elvin, there are competing developments in Westchester and in Stanford. And the market will bear only a certain amount of charge that can be incurred. We know that to build this, we have got to provide that level of finish, of amenities, of staffing, in order to create what we would call a high-end or high-quality senior development. And so to reduce the number of units simply would end up by making this an impossible project to develop, because the business model would not permit anything much below the number of units that we have at the Scarsdale facility. So the answer to the question of whether or not we could deal with it deal with the issue of density, which is what we're getting at, I guess, with FAR, is not soluble through pricing, because to build what we have to build, we've dealt with the high cost of land in Greenwich in business zones, which we all agree is a good place to have a senior living facility, and the cost of creating and staffing a facility that could be attractive to people who want to stay in Greenwich in a high quality residence. In considering, I think, where the commission is coming from, I think that we're used to, both in the 6110 G situation and the 8-30G statute, we're used to bonuses, if you will, or incentives based on affordability. That's not the case here. We know that affordable senior units have been provided over the last 43 years through the E-zone. There have been over 400 units of affordable senior housing developed in town as a result. So that is not the issue. The issue is, can we develop the kind of senior living facility that most people feel that Greenwich needs in order to keep its population living here? And we believe, based upon the way that we would have to construct, finish, and staff a facility that would meet that definition, the minimum number of units would be required in order to carry that investment. And the minimum number of units is what we think we've proposed. We've reduced it somewhat since the last version that you saw. And if I may, Ms. Allen, I'd like to introduce Brad Perkins to talk
Mr.
very briefly
Perkins.
about the changes we've made to try to address the points made by the commission. And then if you've got any questions about the business plan or things that I've told you, Brad's got a lot more background and experience in the field of senior housing than I do. So if I may, I'd like to introduce him.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for hearing this again. We all took what we hope were careful notes at the July 14th meeting, and there were quite a number of points that were made, and we wanted to develop positive responses to them. And I can also add to some of the things that Bruce has already introduced, but I'd like to take you through the additional material. I know you've been provided with it, but I'd like to expand on it and try and illustrate how we responded to a number of the major points made on July 14th.
Thank you.
Bruce, is Michelle bringing up the?
I
Pat?
think can do it.
Okay. Of course, I think everybody's quite familiar with the site, and it's as Bruce has clarified, it's a little over 2.5 acres. And can we go to the next slide? So just to refresh everybody's memory as to the plans that we presented in July 14th, and I think we can just run through them. It was 130 units with a memory care wing built around an interior courtyard, which we didn't realize was an issue in Greenwich. And
In Connecticut, sir, it's the
I-
state building code.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you're right. Uh, And, so I think we can just go up through these plans very quickly. Go to the next slide, please. So we have made, this is the new footprint. It's also been somewhat influenced by additional civil engineering. But the new footprint has done several things. One, it's been reduced in size and reduced in terms of floor area ratio from 1.1 to 0.9. The courtyard has been moved to be an exterior courtyard. We have developed a rendered landscape plan using our landscape architect, R.G. Resch. We have reduced the unit count, as Bruce has mentioned, from 130 to 120. The Scarsdale facility was originally built as 115 units, but it has been, the Village of Scarsdale approved a 6-unit addition because of the demand for memory care units. So we're adding 6 units to the memory care unit. And so this is really directly comparable in terms of size. We have moved the parking to, we've added a cellar level, and all of the parking has been moved down to below grade, except for a small number of convenience parking spaces near the entrance on grade. And we have worked with the architecture and tried to make, to be able to present to you tonight more of the intent, and we have taken your comments on the height and the massing of the building, and have tried to, through a number of architectural approaches, to reduce the long facade, to bring the roof line down so that it looks more like a 3-story building with units in the behind the roof and in sort of the attic level, although it'll be a full height level. And I'd just like to take you through some of the renderings we did to try and make this come alive. So next. So here is the rendered site plan. We were making adjustments so that this drawing doesn't have the cranked end of the building that was necessary, because we expanded the entry drive to fit some civil engineering requirements. Shows the 5 on-grade parking spaces that come in under a covered porte cochere. And then we're proposing a very heavy landscape area with walking paths and seating areas, and probably a putting green and other elements, as well as a screening line of trees along the track frontage, and also some outdoor dining and activity spaces. So next, please. So this is coming from up Old Track Road. You can see the porte cochere in the distance. This is just as you're approaching the building, and you see the steep slope off to the right, which has a number of mature trees on it, and there'll be some supplemental landscape as well there. Next, please. And then moving further into the site, this is showing how the entrance is covered. And as in the case of all good assisted living, it's important to have a protected, covered entranceway. And so we have this porte cochere element. And then a lot of the common areas of course, are right off of that entrance area. We have moved some of the ones that could be in a basement level. We have moved them down low with back of the house elements such as housekeeping and other elements below grade. And then the 3 residential levels above. But as I mentioned, we've used exterior porches, porches and bringing the roof line down to reduce the apparent mass of the building. And we have used a good deal more in and out with the wings in order to, again, reduce the appearance of a long facade. Next, please. Then this is having gone past the entrance and now looking back at the building. And then one more, please. And then this is one of the landscaped areas there at the end of the site, showing the walking paths coming there. This one of the dining areas, the more informal cafe style dining, opens onto an outdoor patio, which of course there'll be times when there'll be barbecues and outdoor dining, and those paths then lead to a seating area. And as you know, as Bruce pointed out, the average age, we expect the average age to be very similar to Scarsdale, high 80s, which is what we see in most market rate elements, projects like this. And it's a lot more passive recreation. This is not an age group which is physically terribly active, but they all are still ambulatory, and will use, as you correctly pointed out in the July 14th meeting, that landscape will be quite important to the quality of this project. Next, please. So just to go quickly through the plans, we have moved a number into a basement level, and then we've moved the parking to a cellar level. So you enter there on the right-hand side, and there's a ramp down to the parking level that extends under most of the building at a cellar level. But some of the amenity spaces, because this is planned as an amenity-rich facility, very much like the Scarsdale facility, probably intended to be a notch above Scarsdale, but Scarsdale is viewed as the premier facility. The Ambassador in Scarsdale is the premier facility in Westchester right now. This is Greenwich, however. So next, please. So this is, you can see as it comes down, and this is the parking level. This is a much higher than normal parking level for assisted living, but this does reflect the experience of Scarsdale, partly because of the higher level of staffing, but also there are many, the programming is much richer, and there's many more events. And Mr. Sharma also, frankly, doesn't want a big parking field taking away from the landscaped area. So he is prepared to incur the extra expense of doing this cellar level to get high parking count, as he has experienced in Scarsdale, that it is necessary for this sort of programming that they do as part of their services. Next, please. And this is the basement level, and which has, am I reading this right here? Yes, this is, which has back of the house, such as laundry and mechanical areas, and then over there on the left-hand side are some of the amenity spaces that were moved down from the ground floor in the previous plan. Next, please. And as in the previous plan, the ground floor has a memory care wing there on the right-hand side, and then some of the major public spaces, including the dining areas and some of the other amenity spaces there on that make up the real front door and premier amenity spaces for the facility. Next, please. Then one of the things which also makes it very hard to reduce the size of the facility is that in Greenwich, as is the case with most high-end assisted living facilities, the market preference is very strongly for a real one-bedroom as opposed to a studio. There are many, including over in Stamford and also in other parts of Westchester, where many of the units are small studios, and that was based on what we strongly feel was a false market assumption early on in assisted living, which was that what assisted living should provide is the resident's bedroom, and that all of their social activities and dining would be in the common areas below. We have felt strongly from the beginning that these units should be somebody's home, and they should have a living space, a small kitchenette, all be fully accessible and have a separate bedroom area so that you're not coming into somebody's bedroom when you're coming to visit them. You're coming into their home. And that is where the market has been moving for years. The facilities that are predominantly studios have had increasing market pressure because of that decision. And then, so we have 2 floors of this, and then, next please. Next. And then the upper floor, the top floor, which of course, looking at, will have the ability to look out to the sound. And so this has a series of porches and other elements which are also intended to break down the scale of the facade. And this will be the premier floor as generally good-sized units, and we'll have some additional amenity spaces, lounge spaces. So, and I think that's the last slide.
Do you have any floor plans of the units?
We can
Do you
easily.
do you have a breakdown of studios? Because I'm looking at the roof or the roof level, and you have AL8 and AL9 looks like twice the size. So
Yeah, there are a couple of.
I'm just trying to understand the mix.
Okay, we can certainly provide. We used some of our typical unit plans that we've done about 150 of these projects around the country, and so we can easily provide you with both the mix and what the typical unit plans look like.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have a rendering showing the building with the neighborhood all around it? As I remember it, there's a very steep embankment. This isn't a case where you're building a huge building in a flat area. I think it would complement the area, and I think you've had some favorable input from the neighbors. Do you have kind of a rendering? Because from what I can tell, and I've been there a couple of times, this is not going to tower over the neighborhood. So
No, the neighborhood's going to tower over this project.
which is good. Which is good.
Yeah. No, the condos above have been very seem to have been very receptive, and I believe they've written letter.
They did.
Yeah, the
Right.
commission should have that in their file. a
Yeah,
letter
we
of support.
do. I read it. But I think it'd be good to have a rendering showing your building in the neighborhood. I think that would help your case. But what I really wanted to ask about is I've also driven by your Scarsdale property. That's in a park. This is next to the railroad tracks. Have you done anything to the building to kind of mitigate noise, vibrations from the railroad? And
Yes, well, that is, I mean, that's a very legitimate consideration. We do have a lot of experience building next to rail lines because we also do a lot of transit-oriented development and are doing and have done projects next to a number of commuter rail stations and for developers like Avalon Bay and others. And there are techniques. I mean, for instance, you have to build a different exterior wall section. You cannot have through the wall air conditioning. You have to have a true acoustical barrier to the trains, even though they're most part electrified. But that is a very real consideration, and we're used to the mitigation measures that are necessary to be next to a commuter rail line. It's a real issue, and but we have a great deal of experience with it.
And you're planning to use that experience at this site because it is next to there.
Yeah, well, I mean, this site only works if it's perceived as a luxury development. I mean,
Which is my other question, by the way. Thank you for asking. If this is a luxury, and I assume you're going to charge high rents.
Yeah.
And you guys have built a lot of these, and we haven't. But I guess I like a lot of what I see. I am concerned about the marketability, and I'm sure you guys aren't going into this blind. To get mom and stick her in one of those rooms next to the train station for the trains, and then charge a very high rent. There's a market negative about that sort of a thing. And if this is supposed to be high end, you begin to wonder whether it could be successful. Scarsdale, I'm taking it on your face value that it's successful, but it's in a park and it looks beautiful. This is going to have a lot of people looking at railroad tracks, and across the railroad tracks there are a bunch of other buildings too. It's not like maybe the top penthouse floor gets to see the water, but most people will not. So I don't know. It's very concerning. Now, that's not zoning, but it just pops out to say you're charging, high-end rents for a view of the railroad tracks. That makes me a little nervous. It's your money, but our time.
Well, it's Mr. Sharma's money, but he is a very long time friend of mine, and I take it as seriously as I think he does. It's a judgment call. There are a couple of things here that make me personally optimistic, having done these in so many locations around the country and in some other countries around the world, is that what makes a luxury project, first and foremost, is there's the basic physical package that you have to offer, and there's the basic programming you have to offer, but it's the staffing. Mr. Cohen, noted that the Scarsdale facility has 154 staff. That is easily 3 times the number of most of the assisted living you will find in this area or elsewhere in the US for the same number of units. It's, the hotel, I mean, I do a lot of work in Asia, and I hotel in Shanghai where I stay all the time. The general manager asked me why I was so loyal to the hotel, and I was standing in the lobby, and I said, because of Sabrina, Angel, Walter, Peter. I mean, these were the people who, and this is frankly is true in assisted living too.
Okay.
It's a service package. We know we can make. Then the other factor is there isn't anything else in Greenwich, and there are, there seems to be and we've worked in Greenwich for most of the last 30 years. That there is, the option is to go to Stamford or to go down into Westchester. But there is, there are people that want to stay in Greenwich, and or they want to. There are families that want their, mom or dad or parents to be in the best facility in the region. And I think as Mr. Sharma, when he developed the Ambassador in Scarsdale, he made a point that he was going to build the best facility, and in the hopes that he would also get the best monthly rentals, and he accomplished that. There's
No, I just had to ask that question.
no, I mean, obviously, I've been around long enough to know that there's no such thing as a sure thing.
Right.
But I'm confident that, that there'll be so many good things about this, and, and if combined with the service, that the need is there, and the need for market rate units is clearly there. And the Aging Commission and others have all said this, it's frankly being able to do this elsewhere in Greenwich would probably be even more challenging. One of the nice things about this site was it's in a situation where the neighbors actually like the idea, and it doesn't have, other than the tracks, it doesn't really have any other negative adjacent land uses. So
Got it. Do you have sufficient parking for the staff, or do
Yeah.
you? I
Yeah.
I know that a lot of the residents aren't going to be traveling anywhere.
no, I mean, I think in the Scarsdale facility, I think 2 residents theoretically still drive. I mean, having been in the process of, when I had to take my father's keys away from him, I mean, it's, by the time somebody's in their late 80s, early 90s, most of them shouldn't be driving. There are clearly exceptions, but they're not in assisted living. And the normal ratio for parking or assisted living is really, typically 1 space for every 3 residents. We're talking, almost 70 spaces here. So this is also based directly upon the Scarsdale experience, where it's what really drives the higher count that we're proposing, in which Mr. Sharma was willing to spend the money to put down below grade, which is considerably more expensive, as I'm sure everybody knows.
Yep.
Was because that parking count was necessary in Scarsdale. So
Could you do a summary of 5 similar facilities and employee count, resident count, and parking spaces, so we can
Mhm.
understand from your experience what the right number is? What concerns me isn't the resident count and parking, it's the 130 employees or 150 employees.
Remember, that's
Where are they parking?
yeah, that's 3 shifts, and of course,
Right, good, but I don't want to get in the details. I'm just saying it'd be helpful to understand that matrix.
yes, we will can get that for you.
I have a question. Given what you said about the market preference for true 1 bedrooms, it would seem that you're satisfying or providing the market with the need there. And therefore, you'll be better positioned to respond to what you're anticipating is healthy demand. Have you looked at the feasibility of reducing your FAR to 0.75?
Well, we were, frankly, when we heard the concerns about, the bonus floor area that was built into the previous draft proposed regulations, our next target was frankly the number permitted, for the affordable senior housing, which did require us to, do a number of things to squeeze things down, including removing 10 units. We did not look at 0.75, but I will tell you that, and this, it's experience. The market experience these days is that in the early days there were some developers who were building projects with 90 units. Most of us think that really have to be 110, 120 units. It shouldn't be more than 150. That's already quite a large project, but somewhere north of 110, somewhere between 110 and 130 is sort of the comfortable size that isn't too aggressive for the market, isn't too big and institutional. There were, if you go to Stanford, you can see, a company that I respect and have worked for, Sunrise, is, they were one of the big advocates of these Victorian house scale units, and they would have, 80, 90 units, a lot of them studios, and they could make them fit into residential neighborhoods. They are a good operator generally, and therefore they were the first really big quality chain in the market, but their emphasis on smaller units and smaller size projects has been somewhat problematic financially. And,
correct me if I'm wrong, is the underlying FAR 0.5 and what you're proposing, at 0.9 is an 80% increase?
That's correct. It's the underlying zoning is 0.5, and we're proposing using the same FAR as the affordable housing regulations.
Moderate income.
The affordable seniors.
Moderate, right.
Yeah, or the moderate.
Yeah, right. Bruce.
That's okay. Don't worry.
I will stumble over some of those things. So.
Don't worry.
So,
Mr. Perkins, it's my understanding Old Track Road's a private street. Has there been any discussion with the owner to eliminate the cul-de-sac at the end, or work an agreement so that could be removed? You get to the end of the street, you have your cul-de-sac, and then your driveway to the turnaround.
Yeah, there have been discussions with Mr. Ferrari. I was not a party to them. I think Mr. Sharma would be, or Mr. Cohen would be in better position to.
Mr. Macker, I understand that there have been discussions, but they haven't reached any agreement on that. That was an area of discussion.
That's good to know. At least you're discussing it. Okay. Mr. Perkins, I appreciate the fact that you're going down with the garage. That's great. And looking at the provided materials, we have 4 stories technically on the front side and 5 in the back. Is that correct? The lower part of the lower level is exposed?
Well, it's conforms to the basement regulations in a residential zone, which is that what would be visible, and of course, the only people who could see would be occasionally somebody from a commuter rail, will still be, it'll look like a 4-story building. There is a ramp down to the to loading into a loading area. But that is, I think what we'll probably do, also related to the earlier comment, is to do a site section for you to, but quite frankly, nobody will see this as anything but a 4-story building.
Yes, the site section would be appreciated. Actually, I think actually from that lower level straight through, I guess it's north, or generally north. Because I'm looking at the revised civil engineering, and for a relatively flat site, I'm actually wondering why the first floor is about 13 feet out of the ground.
I'm not sure that I understand. I mean, Mr. DeAndrea is doing the calculations on and
Okay, well,
grading.
yes.
I think the
saying
site
is-
section maybe will clarify that.
Right, what I'm saying is I have a spot elevation at the end of Old Track of at about 60, but the information that I have in front of me tells me that the first floor elevation is at 73.5.
Yeah, well,
So-
it will be sloping up, using, some of it will be using the cut. Again, this is something that Mr. DeAndrea would can better clarify, but again, the site section there is a distinct slope up from, as one enters the site, up to the entrance level.
Okay,
Yeah.
actually, I'm glad you talked about the slope. That retaining wall that's being proposed is pretty significant. I mean, the elevation change, I guess, is the low is 60 and the high is about 80 in that slope, and there's a good portion of that is being removed. I think having the landscape address that is actually critical, because it seems that there's an awful lot of trees coming out of there, and it may not be as screened as people anticipate.
We intend to, and the intent is to have it screened on both the track side and the hillside.
Okay, well, I'm looking at the landscape plan. I see, yes, the landscape on the track side. I'm looking at the sloped side. It's significant, but I'm not too sure how well that would work. Mr. Cohen, I got a quick question about the revisions. In the regulation as proposed, we talk about having 750 square feet of land per unit. And then goes on, actually, we had talked about the last time having open space. And the proposal says 425 square feet per unit of open space. So in a sense, the calculation is that those two numbers combined for the land where this proposal could be used, this proposed regulation. Is that correct? I just want to make sure I understand that, right?
I don't think so. I think that's for two separate purposes. One is to determine the units, and the other is to determine the recreation area. And I agree that you use the same starting place, but it's for two separate purposes.
Okay, so I'm gonna get the 750 per unit, and then I need the 425 of open space per unit. But they work hand in hand.
To determine the outdoor recreation area. That was
Right, so-
that was really based on the suggestion that was made, I think, by Ms. Alvin at the last hearing, that there were other regulations in other towns that provided for that, and this gives us almost an
statute.
acre worth of. Excuse me.
State statute.
Okay, because it was a
What I
little,
was about to say is that by doing that calculation, 125 square feet of outdoor recreational space, it ends up with pretty much what we've got, which is almost an acre of landscape recreation area.
Okay, so these numbers I'm looking at are basically based on this site, correct? Our calculation for this site?
It ends up with, yes, they're based on this side.
Okay, so if I take this to the next site, but I'm using what we're proposed here tonight, it may not work as proposed, because we're looking for land and open space at the same time.
That's true.
Okay. Thank you very much for providing all the information that you did in your cover. Was looking at the properties that were outlined in the letter. I was actually quite enthralled that actually all of them are significantly developed, and that actually none of them, unless you actually tear down probably mostly successful buildings or successful properties, you would never be able to do this again. It's just kind of luck that this is
Oh,
a
but
vacant
I
piece of
wouldn't,
property.
I mean, the redevelopment happens so much that, I never assume that when I look at Greenwich.
I completely understand, but I'm looking at,
I know
I
you
was
do.
looking at pieces of property that actually significant
Mr. Becker,
redevelopment.
Yeah.
you're talking about the E-zone property?
No, the
Um,
GB, he was looking at what could be done in the GB.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
got it, right.
One of them is, Greenwich Office Park, Arnold's Bakery. We can go on and on and on.
Yeah,
And they seem
right.
all to be on the western side of town as well.
Okay. So, so you were just looking at the zones. Oh, who's got their hand up? So are you guys a little bit done with your questions so we could maybe get some public comment on this?
Done for now.
Okay. Somebody's got their hand up and I'm having trouble finding them. Hold on, I'm going, oh, there's Candace, okay.
Ira Lutsky is the person with the hand up, Madam Chair.
I got it, no, it's actually John Tessie.
Oh, well, we have two up in the room right now.
All right,
And
I've got
I
John Tessie, who I
Both of
know
them.
is, okay, so and Steve, I've got Steve Hall and John Tessie. I'm not seeing Ira.
Ira was up first, if I could just.
I got it, Ira. Okay, here we go. Promote to panelist. Here he goes. Okay. Mr. Lutsky, if you would unmute and feel free, whatever you want to do with your video is fine. If you would go ahead. There you go. You're unmuted now. Mr. Lutsky? Hello? We can't hear you if you're speaking. Okay. Okay, Mr. Lutsky, you keep trying and I'm gonna hear someone else first. I believe that actually John Tessie is here as a member of the public. Oh, why is he on hold, Mr. Lutsky?
I just put him to the side until the audio comes back.
Oh, I just learned something new from you. Mr. Tessie, if you would go ahead, I believe you're here as a member of the public or to represent someone. What happened to John Tessie?
Looks like he lost his internet.
Okay. It's not a good night. Okay.
Back now. Wait, hold on. Mr. Tessie is back. He should be popping up.
Okay. Bring him on in.
3, 2, 1. No. Okay. Then I guess on to Mr. Hall.
Mr. Hall. We hope that you're gonna be the one who can do it.
We talking to Patrick?
No, I know Patrick can do it. I'm just trying to get, we've had 3 speakers who haven't been, Mr. Hall, if you would unmute. There you go. Yay. Okay.
Great, yay.
And then John Tessie's back. Mr. Tessie, as soon as Mr. Hall is finished, we'll bring you back. Oh, Mr. Tessie fell out again. Oh, okay. We'll just keep him muted until then. Go ahead, Mr. Hall.
Yes, I was on a member of the Energy Task Force under Pat Sesto for over a year, I guess. And one of the things that we thought about and addressed was the Eastern Greenwich Civic Center. When they put out an RFP for that, there was no mention whatsoever in all the multiple goals that they wanted to achieve of energy efficiency.
Sir, this application is for an assisted living facility, not for Eastern
Oh, I'm
Greenwich.
sorry. I'm sorry. I thought we
Okay.
were-
No, sir, we'll call on you when we get to the Eastern Greenwich facility.
I may not be around for that. Can I also send in a letter?
Of course you can. You can email anytime.
My email, Steve, it's Katie. You have my email and I'll get it right over to the commission. And this is just a preliminary, so there's plenty of time on that
Okay,
one.
Mr. Tessie, don't go away. Oh, yes, do get dressed up. What a good idea.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Tessie, now that you have your jacket on, please go ahead.
Is you unmute.
Okay,
Okay, yes, sir.
I'm actually here. Thank you very much. Actually, thank you, Bruce, and members of the commission. As you can, I'm sure, surmise, I'm here representing John Ferrari. With regard to the application, I don't really have much to say, but I think a few of the things are important. John may or may not be listening in, may or may not be speaking. But what I wanted to say is this, in one regard, I'm certainly very happy that Bruce and Mr. Sharma have taken the time to propose an assisted living facility regulation. I certainly have talked to Katie enough about it over the years, and I'm happy to see that move forward. Whether or not this is the right approach is really something I'm not here to talk about this evening or need to. I'd like to see it continue because I think the town should absolutely take a step back and look at our regulations and how they can address the assisted living program itself, whether it's solely in the GB zone or GBO zone, or more expanded and into some of the residential zones, similar to what we have in the continuing care retirement community regulations. So, with that, as you know, Mr. Ferrari owns, and as Mr. Cohen recognizes, Old Track Road. He has a substantial investment, as you know, on Old Track Road with the Equinox building and his apartment complex called the J Lofts. He built a fairly substantial parking garage across the street from his buildings. So he is very much concerned about anything that goes on at Old Track Road that would affect his tenants, residential tenants and Equinox particularly. We also have CNG in the back there, as I think you all know.
We do
But
indeed.
Equinox, hopefully it'll come back to its glory, its former glory. We don't have to get into that. We all appreciate that the physical training facility environment isn't anywhere near what it was. And that's, allowed from an economic standpoint concerns Mr. Ferrari. So he doesn't want to do anything to further jeopardize their ability to sustain their business model. Indeed, he has, as recognized by the commission and as stated by Bruce, met with Mr. Sharma. I think they had pleasant conversations. But John made it quite clear to Mr. Sharma that from his perspective, he would like to see, knowing what he wants to protect, a comprehensive overall plan going forward for Old Track Road. He's concerned that Lexus, as you all probably know, but maybe you all don't know, ownership has changed. The Griffin family, after all these years, is out of the business in Greenwich. And John has actually met with the owner, who's an interesting fellow, John tells me, relatively young, although everybody's young nowadays, from what I could see. And they've had some discussions about the property, but nothing concrete. So John right now is basically taking a step back he is the owner of the road, controls its development or non-development 100%. There are concerns, therefore, he has as to what would be proposed by the town, perhaps more than Bruce or his client in terms of expanding the road, in terms of putting in sidewalks, none of which can be done without John's approval, consent. And he's right now in a position where he wants more dialogue with Mr. Sharma. He wants more dialogue with the owners of the owner of the Lexus property. I believe it's one gentleman who controls it, as I said earlier, and see if parties can come up with a plan that'll give John comfort for his property investments and also for a proper and capable sustaining of the traffic environment coming from and onto Old Track Road. John also, as you know, so that's really what John wanted me to convey.
Mr. Tessie,
Yes.
just to refresh the commission's memory, because we have some people that weren't here at the time. Would you just, J-Lofts has 63 units?
In the low 60s. I think it may have a
And
couple more.
it's 20% moderate income?
It works out to probably more like 15%. It was under the old 75% rules, and the calculations were different. In actuality, he didn't have to offer even that number of units. It was
Yeah, as I remember.
The formulations were a little were cleaned up by your recent regulations. And by the way, just digress a second. I'm a bit confused, but maybe I'm behind the times. Mention was made of our moderate income unit regulations that provide for 20% now, but I understand that's still under a moratorium. Or has
Yes,
that
it
been
is.
lifted?
No, it's still under a moratorium
Yeah,
until
that's what I
November.
thought. So I think it was good to clarify that because it
Thank you.
sounded as if those regulations were still in effect. And
Yeah,
I
no,
won't-
he was
I
just
won't- I
saying,
won't speak- Go ahead.
he was just saying that that's the direction they were going in, is to ask for the 0.9.
Yeah, but it was interesting because he's asking for something that caused you all to, I think that was that caused you all to call timeout, right? On that regulation itself. And so anyway, you get what I'm.
You made the
saying.
point exactly.
Right.
At the
Oh.
July 14th meeting, we raised the same issue. The 0.9 FAR, they originally came in with over a 1.0 FAR, and we really wanted to understand why this type of FAR was necessary, and have asked for clarification on that. And you're absolutely right, Mr. Tessie. The commission was uncomfortable with the moderate income that was in place. And the reason that the commission was uncomfortable in part was because our residents were uncomfortable with the density. So if we are asking the question for that very reason. So thank you for raising it.
Well, while we're on this point, could I just jump in and we can answer it later? But I was referring to Peter Tessie's letter dated 10/4/20 that says that the existing GB zone allows
0.5.
0.9. It said gross lot area, but FAR.
It allows it only in,
For a
there's a,
not for profit. in the
yeah.
GB zone. So, I mean, we're at 0.9 in the GB zone for not.
No, only, sorry.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. We can address that
Or
maybe.
no, it's a quick answer. It's only if you're doing low income, not luxury. And so
Okay.
that was the first question that we asked when they came in. So Mr. Tessie, is that it?
Well, just to be clear, as I said earlier, I'm not here to impugn the proposal of having a regulation for that zone, and I'm not sitting here saying there shouldn't be somewhat of a bonus. As I said earlier, whether it should be limited to GB, GBO, I don't know, but I will say on behalf of John that, as you all know, he owns a substantial amount of property in the GB zone, GB and GBO zones, probably more than anybody else by far. So we are looking at the regulation itself with intrigue, and we're actually looking forward to more dialogue with with Bruce, well, Bruce
And Mr. Tessie,
wishes
it
to
would,
join, and with his client, and with the owner of the Lexus property.
Yeah.
And I can just leave it at that.
and Mr. Tessie, it would not be unfair to say, oh my gosh, he went away again.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. You've been jumping squares a lot.
Really, I've been right here. Anyway, I don't know.
Well,
On my screen, I'm right here.
Would it be fair to say that Mr. Ferrari might redevelop some of his GBO or GB properties in the future?
Well, we have a pending application before you.
Others, yes, other
At
ones.
581 that we're looking forward to get approved. I don't have to get on the grants.
No, I mean other ones that are not pending.
You know, the world is changing, Margaret, so rapidly. I don't think anybody really at this point in time knows what is in the offering going.
Good point.
What the world's going to offer us going forward. John has significant investments, obviously, in Authors Park and in that corridor. He's got some residential properties. We've talked about assisted living across the board on a number of properties. And he's obviously been approached very much so by a number of people interested in that world, something that should be addressed, as I said earlier. So the short answer is John has, throughout his life, and successfully has redeveloped properties with an eye to the market, and also, as you know, generally with an eye in working with the commission and his neighbors.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tessie.
Thank you all for the time.
Mr. Tessie, before you go away,
He's gone.
understanding your client's.
He's gone.
He's gone?
Yeah.
Well, then, Mr. Cohen, I'm sure can hear this. I think actually what Mr. Tessie brought up is a critical point, and as I see it, one of the Achilles heels to this proposal of the site, not the amendment, but the proposal for the site, is specifically the intersection of Old Track and Field Point. There is a lot of things that happen on Old Track, both sides, even at the end. In your discussions, I think actually maybe even include representatives of the town is actually to talk about that intersection, because this is going to be where the bottleneck actually happens. I think you understand that. I think maybe your client understands that. So the open dialogues that you have with Mr. Tessie and his client would be very beneficial.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mr. McBride. If I may, Ms. Owen, can I just?
Yeah, sure. But Mr. Lutsky, we've got one more person from the public. Why don't we just get that done? Can you hold the thought? Would that be okay?
You bet. Thanks.
Okay. Mr. Lutsky, looks like you're ready to go.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. I'm going to demote your other computer, okay?
Yes, obviously that wasn't working.
All right. Okay, go ahead. And can you turn that off because we're getting an echo? Okay.
Is that any better?
Yeah, I think that works.
Very
Maybe
good.
not. Okay. Well.
No.
No, the speaker on the other device you're listening to should be off. That way we don't get the feedback.
Okay. Thank you. All right, how are we doing now?
Try it. Perfect. Good job. Thank you very
Hello?
much. Yes, good.
Oh, you hear me?
Yes.
You hear me?
Yes. Mr.
Hello?
Lutsky?
I'm so sorry I'm causing you these problems. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I can't turn off the other speaker, my speaker, because then I won't hear you if I'm doing this the right way. Are you still getting the echo?
Yes, but we'll be very quiet and then we won't have to worry about it.
All right, and I'll be very quick. I just wanted to clarify something that Mr. Cohn says. I am living in the Viewstone condominiums, which directly face the prospective project. We very much would like to see something like this assisted living center in that area. It's been a very unsightly, noisy, dirty area with all the work and construction. I've been living here for now 14 years, and clearly the area does not seem to be in such demand that something would have happened in the 14 years. So it's nice to see someone interested in this. So my neighbors and I are very interested in seeing this proceed. There is one point that I want to address that Mr. Cohen made. Based on what I'm seeing in terms of elevations and where my neighbors' concerns are, there's only about a 24-foot difference between where the assisted living center starts and our houses across from it, beyond the trees. And during the winter, we would be looking right down on them. From what I'm seeing, you're talking about a 24-foot difference. That building is about 47 feet from what I saw in the plans, and ours are about 30. So when you put all that together, they will be slightly above us. And there are also 2 lower elevation units adjacent to mine, because we slope down, that are at 78 feet. So you're talking about only an 18-foot difference. And we're talking about, again, about 18 feet higher than 47 feet versus our building, which is about 30 feet. So it certainly does not tower above us, as Mr. Cohen might have thought. So I just wanted to bring that out. And that is a concern of some of my neighbors.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Lutsky, quick question. The units that you're talking about, they're at the end of Stone Avenue?
Yeah. Yeah,
At
yes.
the end of Spring Avenue.
At the end of
Spring.
At the end of Spring Street?
Spring Street, yes.
Okay, and they're there, I guess there's 4 units at the end of Spring Street.
Correct. There are 4 units on Spring Street. Then there are 6 units above us, behind us, but they're not impacted very much.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I got a good location.
Okie doke. All right. All right, and that should get rid of the echo. Okay, so with that, Mr. Cohen, you were about to
Thank you.
answer something that Mr. McRae was asking you.
I was, yeah, there are a couple of comments that I'd like to respond to. Mr. McRae mentioned the intersection. We're very aware of it, and needless to say, if the commission encourages us to move forward with a real application or an application, we will not only study that through a traffic report, but we will deal, of course, with the town about the intersection issues. And of course, we will continue to talk to Mr. Ferrari. I understand his desire for as John Desi puts it, a comprehensive plan. This property does hold an easement to use the road owned by Mr. Ferrari, Old Track Road, for access and utilities, and we will use that easement. But of course, we'll continue to discuss it with Mr. Ferrari and hope we can resolve his issues. I think we all have gotten the benefit of the wonderful things that Mr. Ferrari has done to make Old Track Road a different place to be. Mr. Lutsky's comments about the Viewstone condominium, he's expressed that in a letter that he's provided to P&Z, indicating his association's support, but the concerns of 2 of the unit owners who are at the low end of the grade. Again, if the commission does allow us to move forward with this plan, and we do design the facility, we will review it obviously with Mr. Lutsky and the Viewstone residents, and hope to be able to satisfy their expressed concerns. I think it was Mr. Fox who asked about the staff parking and whether or not, given the number of folks that we will be employing here, whether or not we have enough. I think we will. I think we'll have more than enough because the staffing is spread over 3 shifts. So that we're talking about as many as 154 over the course of a 24-hour period. Not all of those will be requiring parking spaces at the same time. And of course, we do have the advantage of being close to public transportation as well. But that, as I say, if we move forward with this, will be detailed in a traffic and parking study. Finally, I would note that we are presently in discussion with the railroad about acquiring an additional adjacent piece of land to be used solely for the purposes of additional landscaping to address some of the current concerns that Mr. Yeski voiced. We understand the marketability issues, and a robust landscape plan obviously is important in making this a desirable new community. In considering the regulation that we have proposed to you, remember that what we are suggesting is an overlay zone. In other words, it's a site-specific zone
We understand
that would not allow a parcel to be rezoned unless the commission would determine that the location is appropriate for the kind of facility that's being proposed and for the kind of density that may come before the commission. I'm suggesting in coming to you at this time that the Old Track Road site in the GB zone, traditionally used for uses that were not necessarily compatible with the rest of the residential area, is a good place for this. I think traffic and noise will be eliminated. And I think that the fact that most of our residential neighbors have indicated support for this is an important indication. So we need your input, and we're here to ask for it to determine whether or not we can move ahead with this.
So from Mr. Cohen, from my point of view, I'm still not clear. And would still like to have more information on why you require that type of FAR, why you're seeking that magnitude of FAR bonus. I just don't have my brain wrapped around it. I need more data. Mr. Lowe had suggested that you consider 0.75. I don't know how the rest of the commission feels about that. I, for one, just feel like we had asked you that July 14th. You gave us a little more tonight, but I still don't have it. That's my biggest piece of guidance. I am a little worried about the use of Old Track, because if you ever had to do an evacuation or something, it could be problematic. But I do very much support the idea of having a market rate assisted living facility in town. Other commissioners wish to weigh in before we close this, because we've been at it for almost an hour and a half. I think for a discussion item, that's more than plenty.
Mr. Cohen, thank you for a very good presentation. I think that you've done a lot of good work on this. The design really shows a lot more detail, a lot more refinement, and the site is somewhat challenging, but I think it's a very good location for this project. Along with the employees and that traffic concern, you should include deliveries, I believe, and that will be, because I know that there'll be deliveries constantly at a facility like this. And the other thing is that the FAR could very well be mitigated by the additional land that you are suggesting it might be available from the railroad, which would be which would help you out quite a bit, I think. So I don't know if you have more information on that, but that would be good information for the committee, the commission. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I just go back to what I think the central question is here, and that is the FAR and how it compares to other zones, other uses. And while I think we can offer some suggestions that have been made during the course of the discussion tonight about design and so forth, I think our real task, commission, is to really look across all the zones in town and try to make sense of what FAR should be. From my perspective, I think 0.9 is too much. But at the same time, I'll say I think having this type of facility in town would be a great addition. So I hope that that message comes across clearly to Mr. Cohen and the team that's working on this. And I think you've really got to look at something that's smaller and in keeping with FAR or other uses. So that's it.
Anybody else?
I think Mr. Cohen's got his marching orders. He knows what we're looking for on this.
Okay.
I appreciate the fact that actually that they've taken time to reformulate the text amendment for the proposal. I think actually it's clearer now to understand it actually as it applies to any other GB or GBO property and how it's going to fit. I think actually when we see this again, there'll be a lot more answers than question. I hope, but I look forward to that when they come back with the additional information.
Victoria, Peter Lowe, Andy, anything else you want to throw in before we move on?
I'm good.
Okay, Andy's good. Peter's good. Victoria?
I just still didn't quite get that statement from Peter Tessie that said that we allow 0.9 for a nonprofit in a GB zone.
They're talking about. There's an affordable. I'll send it to you. I'll send you the reg. It's an affordable housing, senior affordable housing, not for profit.
Mrs. Goss, look at the.
Not for profit. Okay, got it. Okay.
Look at section 6110G. Okay,
Well,
and then
income.
right.
No,
I
no.
think that's what he's
There's a
looking at,
separate.
so.
There's a separate one for that the housing authority had made for them when they did McKinney, Mr. Cohen, is that right?
Well, it was 40 years ago, so it may have been.
It was McKinney or Agnes Morley or one of those, but it's an old regulation that's basically, it was done for the housing authority to do senior housing.
Okay, because I didn't.
That's the one that, and what the point, and Mr. Cohen's absolutely right, we only have a way of doing it for a below market rate, and we don't have an at market rate. And I think we're all agreed that that's something we should have.
Okay, thank you. I just didn't quite, that
All
was
right.
puzzling me. Thank you.
So with that, Mr. Cohen, I only have one other tiny piece of feedback for you. Your speaker routinely has a lot of static in it. If there's anything you can ever do about the microphone in your computer, it would be great. Because it routinely, when you speak, has static in it. Just telling you. I mean, we do okay. We always know what you're saying. So it's not a deal killer, but just so you know, it just reduces your effectiveness ever so slightly.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Bad enough. Yeah.
Thank
Okay,
you very
thank you.
much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Perkins.
Well, thank you.
Oh, I went to move him and the dancing boxes. Our next application is 75 Holly Hill LLC for a final site plan at 75 Holly Hill Lane. This is to construct a 40-foot sidewalk extension to provide for a second mean of egress.
I think they postponed, didn't they?
No, Vista and Railroad postponed. Holly Hill is supposed to be here.
Oh, I thought they postponed.
The sidewalk?
Pat, didn't they postpone?
Not to
No,
our
it was,
knowledge.
it was I'm only
2
aware.
Vista and 380 Railroad.
Okay, is someone here on?
Yes,
Um,
Mr.
Hi,
Ginter.
Mr. Ginter.
Oh,
Mr. Ginter, would you go ahead?
All right, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right. Oh, there we go.
Yep.
And for the record, you're not postponing, right, Mr. Ginter?
No, we are not postponing. We would like to,
But Katie tried. She wanted to go to this,
that's a long time on that discussion.
All right,
Listen.
an hour and a half later for what we were told would be 20 minutes. Go ahead.
yeah, I apologize. For some reason, my camera is not connecting, so you
That's
will
all
not
right.
be able to see my pretty face, but that's okay.
Okay.
So on behalf of 75 Holly Hill LLC, the owner and the tenant Bright Horizons, we are here to discuss a sidewalk extension along the north facade of the building. With me tonight, I do have Stephen Geller from Bright Horizons and Rick Staub from Point One Architects. When we submitted this material to staff, I don't know, a month or two ago, we thought that this was just a simple request and done primarily so Scott Marucci was on board with the sidewalk. But in talking with staff and hearing the outcome of the discussions yesterday during your briefing, there might be some other comments or questions that members of the commission might have for us tonight. So that's why we have Steve and Rick here to address any of those questions that you might have. So I'll just quickly run through the proposal for you. Patrick, if you don't mind just popping up the exhibits I sent.
I'm sorry, Dave. We got exhibits from you guys?
Yeah, I sent them to Marisa this morning. She said she was
Really,
going to pass
but
them
they
on to you.
postponed. It's odd.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm a little.
I think it's because Chris was on 280, and I remember there was a lot of talk about Chris and 75 Holly Hill. So I think
Yeah, no, that's okay. And we
75.
sent a message to 75 Holly Hill at the briefing yesterday.
So strongly it went right through my head, and I had tunnel vision.
Mr. Ginter, while Mr. LaRose looking, see if he can find it, I have a code question. The sidewalk's actually for egress out of the building from classrooms, correct?
It is. Well, I'll let Rick Staub answer that question for you
Oh, that'd be great.
specifically.
Thank you. Yes.
Mr. Staub, would you raise your hand so we can find you?
Madam Chair, he's in the room.
Oh, there, you got him already. There you got. Okay, good. You're ready to go.
Okay, you want my video? I can do that maybe too.
Sure. As long as you don't tell us you have a pretty face, you're good.
Is that good?
That's great.
Okay, so Mr. Macri, thank you for the question. Actually the new door we're adding is an egress from a corridor.
Okay, and the sidewalk travels along the facade of the building past windows.
Correct.
It's my understanding, actually, if you're doing that, actually, that the windows need to be protected, or those openings need to be protected. Has that been checked?
That has been checked. That's not necessarily the truth here. So in our egress, once we get out of the building, we need to find a safe path to the public way, it's called. And part of that, just like most buildings you see in like a strip mall, will have a sidewalk that goes past windows, and those windows are not fire rated. So there's not that requirement to have an exterior window rated. Exterior windows are rated mainly to protect fires from coming back into the building or blowing out a little bit. So.
Okay. Okay, so we're okay with this going past all of those windows. Great.
Correct. Just like any sidewalk you see in any storefront that has windows on it, they're all kind of going past that. The goal is to get away from the building eventually, and we do that in 40 feet.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
And anybody else have any questions?
Mr. Ginter, I have it up. If is there a particular slide you want to go to right away?
No, we can start quickly on this north, or on this on the site plan here, and you can see the existing sidewalk, where it ends, and where we have to do some minor regrading of the existing sidewalk right now. On the west side of this facade is 2 existing doorways that do exit directly from classrooms. However, the sidewalk is set about 6 inches lower than those current doors. So we are going to be raising those up to be flush with those 2 classroom areas. And then as a result of that, the new sidewalk is going to be flush with the grade as well. And the sidewalk that runs north-south, we'll have some minor work again just to match grades there, so there's safe egress for all faculty and students leaving this in the case of an emergency there. As part of this, there is an existing air conditioning unit that does have to get relocated. We are pushing that a little bit to the east, closer to an existing ventilation shaft, and actually making that that AC unit compliant with the zoning setbacks for its location. Currently, it's does not meet the front yard setback out there. Patrick, if you don't mind going to, we'll skip this one for a second and go to the next one. So we have a landscaping plan. Landscape architect did prepare a landscaping plan. We have approximately 16 shrubs and a fair amount of grassy ground cover proposed along the edge of the new sidewalk to both screen the sidewalk and to protect and the folks who might be walking along this from potentially walking off the edge of the sidewalk. There is a little bit of a grade change out there. So trying to mitigate that by providing some of that landscaping along the edge, as well as screening the relocated air conditioning unit there. And the last slide we have, Pat, if you don't mind flipping to that, is just a rendering that Rick prepared showing the 2 existing doors at least in that lower view in the foreground, and the new door in the background there with the new sidewalk and the landscaping. Everything looks like it's going to blend right on in with the existing facade there. So with that, trying to keep this simple, we're here for any other questions you may have.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, I have one question for everybody. It is supposed to go to ARC tomorrow night, and I'm wondering if it would be best if we left this open to get the ARC comments, and also if the applicant would just double check, have you confirmed that you are fully state building code compliant at this point with your site plan?
I'll let Rick fully respond to that question, but we have a building permit that has been issued for the interior fit out and all of the exterior site work for the play area. So as far as I'm concerned, I believe we would be. This is just a minor oversight from the original application. And I would have thought that this would have been vetted by the building department prior to them issuing the building permit to us.
I think Mr. Ginter, just I think that's probably what we're concerned about. I think we had a discussion yesterday that actually we thought this was going to need some form of a second egress the first time. Here we were back again for second egress. We understand that. We just want to make sure that actually we're not going to see this again because there's going to be another issue.
Can I raise my hand? I don't know how to do that, but I'd like to raise my hand.
No, you can go right ahead. We let people talk.
Okay. So Dave was right. This was an omission, and the omission was on my part that we failed to identify a sidewalk that we needed to propose on the plan. The egress door was always there, drawn in the previous submission. The door was there. It's just that we did not have a sidewalk drawn because I thought the existing sidewalk extended that far. So that was my error in that part. But we always had a door drawn in the original proposal. So we're not adding a door in this case. It's really just adding the sidewalk. And yes, I do confirm that the tenant space that we're designing right now is code compliant. I can't speak for the remainder of the building. There's a lot of tenants here and a lot of floor. And
We're really only worried about the children at this
Yep.
moment because that's all that you're applying for. What do you guys think? Do you want to leave it open for ARC to review it and we can close it after ARC's heard it? Or do you want to close it now and just integrate anything ARC has to say? I mean, it is a sidewalk, so
I would like to
I think
close
we
it.
should close it.
close it. Okey doke.
Close it.
All righty then. So I've got everybody's affirmation on closing it. The regulars are seated on this item. I believe, yes, everybody's nodding. In that case, we'll close it. And Mr. McRae, could I have a motion, please?
Okay, bear with me. Okay, PLPC 2020 260 75 Holly Hill Lane. Applicant is proposing an ADA ramp as egress on the north side of the building at 75 Holly Hill Lane in the GB zone. DPW engineering comments dated 9/23/20 indicate approval for zoning permit. Zoning comments dated 9/29/20 indicate proposal meets the section 6115 of the regs. Sewer provision has no comment to be issued at this time. ARC is to review the project at their 10/7/20 meeting, and there had been no issues from conservation yet.
I think we could just say that whatever comments ARC has on this application should be incorporated, should be reviewed with staff and incorporated into the application accordingly.
So therefore, motion to approve the ARC comments from their 10/7/20 meeting shall be incorporated into the decision. Any previous approvals on the site or specific part of this project shall be adhered to as part of this approval.
And all conditions granted at the time of that site plan and special permit.
Exactly.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Fox has seconded. Mr. McRae,
Aye.
Mr. Levy,
Aye.
Mr. Hardman,
Aye.
Mr. Fox,
Aye.
and Albin is aye. And with that, the motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Our
Thank you, guys.
next
Thank you.
Our next application is the town of Greenwich for the Eastern Greenwich Civic Center at 90 Harding Road for an MI. And then we will open the public hearing and review the site plan for that. Is the presenter, Mr. Manelli has his hand up, Pat, if I just got him, I think.
I don't see him in the. Oh,
I just
there.
transferred him in.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Manelli. If you would unmute. Hi, Mr. Manelli. How would it be if we opened the MI and the site plan at the same time? And we had, okay, so we are now opening the public hearing and we will hear this item combined. Before we begin hearing it, just an explanation. A couple of people had asked me to clarify this because we're hearing the MI as well. The commission has to decide if the MI is consistent with the plan of conservation and development. So the decision on the MI that the commission makes is not about regulations. It's about what is contained in the plan of conservation and development and whether this proposal meets those goals. Then in the site plan, we do look specifically at our regulations as they apply to the site plan. And with that, Mr. Manelli, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. I have a lot of people should be viewing this right now in support of the project. I believe Joseph Sliano's on. The chairman, the co-chairs of the committee that was appointed by the selectmen, Gary Delabate and Scott Johnson, and Joseph Sliano, Director of Parks and Rec. And we'll call on them as we need them over the course of the presentation. For the MI, the town is planning on completely replacing the Eastern Greenwich Civic Center located at 90 Harding Road. The center was originally constructed as an employee recreation center for Electrolux in 1950. In 1966, the town acquired the property and became the Eastern Greenwich Civic Center. The existing building's a two-story reinforced concrete and masonry structure, totaling about 3,165 square feet. The building sits on town-owned parcel of 13.22 acres, which includes the playing fields, and a separate owned town parking lot across the street of 2.2 acres. And the lot is exclusive for the use of the Civic Center and playing fields. There's limited on-site parking for staff and users of the exterior tennis courts and children's playgrounds at the rear of the building. The town had originally targeted this project way back in 2000 as a building rehabilitation. During subsequent years, several issues with the building arose which required immediate repair. As the town undertook these repairs, a systematic replacement schedule of major building components was developed, as well as investigating other non-related issues such as space utilization, functionality, accessibility. After exploring the existing condition of the structural concrete, exterior masonry skin, windows and flashing, lack of thermal insulation, the steam, boiler and hot water radiant heating system, the lack of air conditioning, non-compliant restrooms, deteriorating subterranean plumbing systems, fire code issues at the main stairwell, and the percentage of buildings unusable space and the cost to make them usable, as well as non-accessible second floor, the town has determined the cost of rehabilitation would be such that a new replacement building would provide these efficiencies in all aspects of operation that the existing building cannot deliver, and therefore the town decided to pursue the building's complete replacement. The Civic Center is operated by the department and is staffed by the Department of Parks and Recreation, who provide a various variety of recreational programs for all age groups, and they schedule and rent the space in the building for other programs and organizations. In 2018, the first selectman established a committee to ascertain the desired amenities that would require a new building. And to that end, Sports Facility Advisory was hired to inspect the existing facility and interview all current stakeholders who utilize the center. Armed with that information, they developed a townwide survey so that the residents could also comment on the replacement plan. The committee analyzed the survey results and developed a list of replacement goals. The goals included was the type of spaces needed in the new building as well as the amenities. The committee held several public informational meetings to discuss the project and a list of goals. And in 2019, the committee also released a proposal for Connecticut licensed architects that are interested in developing the plans for a replacement building based on the list of replacement goals. After a 5-month process, the committee selected TSKP of Studios of Hartford, Connecticut to begin the redesign. The project scope deals with replacing the existing Civic Center with a new modern single-story structure utilizing the southern 4.5 acres of the current site. Work to improve the existing playing fields are not included as part of this project. The plan's main components will be demolished, the existing 31,000 square foot two-story Civic Center. The replacement building will be a single-story steel framed building with masonry and glass exterior walls at 35,482 square feet. The replacement building will be totally ADA compliant. The interior space amenities of the replacement building will have a multiple full-size gymnasium with rollout specter seating of 8,100 square feet, multiple event space, additional multiple event space of 8,100 square feet with an event kitchen, 3 separate activity rooms that are 1,000 square foot each and have a capacity of 49 persons, and 2 have a shared common folding partition so that they can be open to create a larger single space, storage room for all gym, event, activity equipment, expanded vending area with lounge areas, updated and centrally located restrooms with separate family restrooms, exterior restrooms to support field activities, an administrative office area, interior waiting area, and lease space for OGRCC. The exterior building will utilize the existing lighted tennis courts and children's playground. They will remain intact. Incorporate a new south parking lot with a turnaround to increase the vehicle drop-off and pickup areas. We will be retaining the existing drop-off and pickup area off of Harding Road. Will include a functional loading dock with scissors hydraulic platform to facilitate event deliveries, and reconfigure the existing surface parking lot across Harding Road, including aesthetic improvements, and maximize the number of spaces to comply with zoning regulations for building function. Additional considerations: the Civic Center construction project will be restricted to the area of the present building, which is the 4.5 southern acres, leaving the playing fields intact and maintaining the existing playing fields during the construction period, along with retaining the line of trees that separates the building site from the field. The construction of the replacement building will be subject to all P&Z and inland wetland regulations. The design of the building site will fully comply with the town's stormwater quality manual. The new building must be designed to accommodate a myriad of function in all spaces, including gymnasium, basketball court, and a new event hall. The design of these spaces must include safe method for delivering electricity to sales booth displays and exhibits. Environmental analysis of the soil surrounding the existing building was performed, and there were no issues found. The engineering division of the town's Public Works Department is working on a storm drain solution for Harding Road in conjunction with the site plan for the new building. The actual work to resolve the road issue is not part of the building replacement cost, but it is a central issue in how to resolve this whole drainage issue on Harding Road. Energy efficiency, I know somebody called a little while ago during that last presentation. The building will have thermal insulation to meet or exceed state energy code in wall ceilings and footing perimeters. Exterior windows will be low E insulated glass with high performance organic 2-coat PVDF, fully modulating high efficiency gas fired condensing boilers, high efficiency air cooled chiller, building management system to control and optimize performance of the building, outdoor temperature reset on both the heating and cooling plants. Interior space temperatures will be based on owner-defined occupancy schedules. CO2 levels will be controlled, which will control the ventilation, which will reduce the energy conservation or energy consumption of the building while maintaining a healthy indoor environment. Energy recovery wheels in the men's and ladies' restrooms. An add alternate is indicated for total energy recovery wheels to be installed on the 4 air handling units throughout the whole building. The building will be exclusively LED lit. Occupancies and vacancy sensors to de-energize lighting fixtures when the room is vacant. Dimmer switches in select spaces to allow users to change light output. Photocell and time management scheduling devices to control exterior and site lighting. Electronic flush valves and faucets to automatically stop water flow when not being used. Low flow plumbing fixtures. And the building's roof and internal electric system will be designed to incorporate a future installation of photovoltaic solar cell panels. These systems will be installed by an independent provider of the town's choosing through a power purchase agreement. And with that, is one of the or both of the committee chairs available, or Joe? Process and how we went through this.
Joe, I've got Joe. Hold on. And you're going to talk about the process of how you decided and how you did the public input and all of that, right? Hi, Joe.
Good evening.
And who was the other person you wanted, Mr. Manelli?
It'd be either Scott Johnson or Gary.
Oh, there's Gary Delabate. I got him.
Okay.
Okay. And you said one more person?
Scott Johnson, if he's available.
Scott Johnson, would you raise your hand, please? Your virtual hand. There you go. Great. I always have this image of somebody being home raising their hand. Oh, I like that background. Okay. All right. You've got your league here.
So, Joe, Scott, Gary, do you want to talk about how the process unfolded?
I'm just, I would just run through a little bit of a chronological scenario that I put together. It's pretty simple. It'll take 2 minutes, but I would like to get it on the record. So
Super.
Alan pretty much covered that, we went into a contract with SFA, Sports Facility Advisory Group out of Clearwater, Florida. And that happened in March of 2018. They conducted a survey needs assessment. The survey needs assessment went out on June 20th, 2018. It was returned on July 20th, 2018. There were 2,522 respondents, which created a valid survey. In July of 2018, the first selectman, Office of the First Selectman, put together the special committee for the Eastern Greenwich Civic Center project, consisting of 3 board members, 2 staff, Parks and Recreation, 1 P&Z staff, 1 BET member, 1 DPW member, and 1 neighborhood association member. November 2018, the SFA needs assessment was finalized and was placed online for the public review. January 2019, the Riverside Association at their annual meeting held a public forum to discuss the Eastern Greenwich Civic Center project. January 2019, again, the committee adopted the replacement goals for the center. They were voted on by the committee. March 2019, DPW put out an RFQL, which was for engineering and architectural services. April of 2019, the Greenwich Civic Center Committee met with Districts 5, 6, and 12 of the RTM at a meeting to discuss the Eastern Greenwich Civic Center project. June 12th, 2019, the Eastern Greenwich Civic Center Committee held a public hearing at Town Hall to hear residents' input on the project. July 2019, DPW we reviewed 4 firms that submitted proposals for the Eastern Greenwich Civic Center with the committee. November 2019, a contract with TSKP Studios of Hartford was executed. February 1st of 2020, there was a public meeting by the Eastern Greenwich Civic Center Committee. June 2020, public meeting with the Eastern Greenwich Civic Center. August 13th, 2000, there were 2 meetings held, one which was public input, the second one was a vote by the Board of Selectmen to move forward the MI for this project. Other notable meetings that should be recognized in the record that were held by the board, the Eastern Greenwich Civic Center Committee, September 2018, October 2018, another meeting on October 30th of 2018, the meeting of December 13, 2018, and April of 2019. Those are just committee meetings that were all published, agendas, and all public meetings to be to hear comments. That's all I have. Thank you.
I'm not sure who to ask this of, but Mr. Siciliano, maybe those results you guys got back on the survey of what people wanted, would you be able to share those with us? Is it written somewhere, what people told you they wanted to see and all of that, so that we can make that part of the record? Because for the MI, we really should include why it is the way it is, and the the facilities are, and what.
Are you looking for the survey information, or are you looking for the public comment?
Really, Mr. Siciliano, just kind of how you got to what it is and why it is what it is.
Yep.
And here's what people told us at the end of the day. Here's what we heard from people, and that's why we're doing this, and that's why we're doing it the way we're doing it. Because for us, that's what we have to look at for the MI and for the POCD, and that would just be, if you just send it into us, and that would be great, and then we can
get it forward over to Katie. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have questions?
Yeah, it's Scott Johnson.
Hello, Scott Johnson.
Can I just follow up on that?
Yeah.
So since this project has really been talked about for over 10 years.
Yeah.
One of the most
at least
important, and I and some of the other members were involved in the very early days. So one of the most important challenges was to see what the community wanted and whether it was doable. So the study that we're referring to was a company that specializes in that stuff and does market analysis amongst other things. So they sent out a survey. The results of the survey were reviewed by us. It's probably 150 pages maybe with a lot of charts.
Okay.
And we reviewed it carefully. We saw a lot of things that were just inappropriate. But what we did before we made any judgment on that is we had formal and informal public hearings. So the example there is Gary and I and other board members, committee members, met with all the RTM districts that were relevant, because we said, what do you guys think? We're not coming to you with a project. We're coming to you with questions.
Mm-hmm.
And then the theme was, we don't know the answers to these questions, but here's some of the comments that we've received. So, for example, in the survey, there were high popularity responses for a number of things like swimming pools, hockey rinks, additional turf fields, field houses, tennis courts, and rock climbing walls and everything. So we said to people, look, there are a couple of directions we think are realistic because we have a major budgetary concern. We have a CIP that's out there. We are in that capital year. We have funds allocated for that, and we have a BET that right now has an appetite for this. This is in 2018. That has an appetite for this.
They have trouble with their appetite.
We're thinking that to basically replace the facility with a new facility in the same footprint, and forget about swimming pools, hockey rinks, 5 new tennis courts, and 7 new AstroTurf fields, because it's not realistic. And there are other projects in town, like another hockey rink that's now being reviewed, other turf fields that are being proposed in other areas. So here's what we think is realistic.
Okay.
And it's essentially, we came up with these replacement goals, which meant basically 2 large gymnasium type spaces, one of which was a little more oriented to events, like let's just say Junior League, Gem Show, senior citizens breakfasts, all those things that we've done historically there. A lot of rooms devoted to multi-purpose, small rooms, 1,000 square feet, with providers. So we can have bridge groups, Red Cross, Alzheimer's, that kind of stuff. And we basically said, look, if you guys want a 14,000 square foot field house in addition to this basic replacement, tell us now, because we don't want to be going down the road and all of a sudden the budget just went up $10 million for a 14,000 square foot field house. So the end result of that, after 7 essentially community open meetings, but RTM focused, was, we like your idea. We don't want a field house. We don't want a swimming pool because we've got a new swimming pool. We have all sorts of other things. Yes, there may be some interest in a latte bar, or there may be some interest in a climbing wall. There may be some interest in pickleball. Some of these are realistic and some of them aren't. But basically, as we started to then develop this with the architects and had architect-based meetings, things were very well received. And that's what gave us the energy to continue to go on, as opposed to, we were very honest. Gary and I were very honest with the RTM district. We said, if this is not realistic, we're going to stop now, because we were all involved in this 10 years ago where it got nowhere. And we don't want to do that. And we see energy now. And I think if we don't get it now, because of the BET initiative and the CIP, we're going to be down the road another 15 years.
Right.
And it wasn't like we were trying to be overly realpolitik based, but everyone realized that. So all the comments, which were numerous about our shortage of playing fields, were recognized, but that's not going to go in the Civic Center. It's going to go in other projects. So that's how we kind of came up with these replacement goals.
Yeah, if I could just jump in for a second, and Scott has worked so hard on this. It's been great to work with him. You know, we were tasked with by Peter Tessie to put together a multifunctional, multi-generational civic center. And, you know, at times people look at this as different ways. You know, oh, we could put in a pool. And when Joe sends you the survey, you know, you'll see in the survey it says, you know, would you like a pool? But, you know, the question doesn't say, would you like a pool if it's going to mean losing half the civic center and cost an additional $8 million. So as Scott said, once we got out to these meetings and talked to people, we felt we were in a really good spot with everybody about what it could be. We're basically replacing the footprint in a way that works. And you know, and I think that my biggest, I literally got on the board 10 years ago. This was my priority. I always wanted to replace the Civic Center because I knew it was old 10 years ago. And I think that the Civic Center is going to be great for the town, bring in some more revenue for the town, even though that's not the point of it. It's to serve the town first, but I think that we will start to attract some organizations that we lost because that Civic Center was just unusable for them. So I'm very happy with where we landed. You're muted.
I got a reprieve. I have a reprieve. I can unmute. I think to Mr. Johnson's point, as you talk to the RTM as well, these meetings that you had with the RTM, where you were able to hone down what you are proposing now, that should be very helpful, because we did the same thing with the POCD. We did public input, but we also went to the RTM districts and talked to them about, here's what we're hearing, and it kind of narrowed it, kind of got it to focus. So I think that'll help you as you move forward with this, to have that piece of the same thing we're asking you for. It'll be useful to you as you go through the rest of this. Anyone else have questions right now? Commissioners?
Why don't we continue with the presentation?
Okay.
I had a question, but right.
I think Mr. Manelli was done.
He was. Well, I was going to answer any questions, so.
Okay.
If anybody has any questions.
I have a question. When all these, when you all received this input and you decided to go forward with the current plan, I'm struck by the word gymnasium. That term in and of itself means probably different things to different people. And I was curious, what are the elements of the gymnasium that were important to maintain some 50, 60, 70 years after the original building was constructed? In particular, I'm interested in what the public felt they were looking for in a gymnasium.
Who wants to take that one? I can take it. I mean, people certainly wanted a basketball court, but it's a basketball court that could also be used for other functions. And then the second large room is not a basketball court. It is a multifunctional room that I think we're going to put a sports floor in there, so it could be used for some sports, but it could also be used for events. So I think that both of these rooms can be used for a variety of functions, and they're not just single function.
Just for the record, this is Joe Siciliano. Parks and Recreation currently does not have a full-size gymnasium in its inventory of buildings. And we rely heavily on some of the school buildings for those applications of indoor sports. As you know, Weston Civic Center is really a 3/4 of a court because it was put into this existing building. So for our own programming base of whatever sports activities, whether it's basketball, pickleball, volleyball, other types of programs that, we provide programs for, training for certain programs, both for our own programs, Parks and Recreation, and others, organizations that we support. This is a great opportunity to have that gymnasium. It is by no means kind of outdated. It's very much dated because in the sense that people are looking for that avenue to exercise, we can have yoga classes. We can do multiple bunch of things. We have roller skating. We can still do all of that on this in this location and on that surface. So very much a discussion item during the whole process, and very much a want during the whole process from all the comments that we heard.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Mr. Manelli, can you provide a construction phasing plan? Your comment on the that the fields are going to remain open during construction. I just want to understand actually how the building's to be built, where everything's stored, all that kind of stuff. Because as I see it, there's 3 separate sites to me. It's the building, the parking lot, and the fields. I'd like to see how that works amongst the 3 of them. In saying that, I think one of the things that would actually strikes me, and I think we actually talked about this yesterday, is actually to do a real physical connection between the site, the building, and the parking lot across the street. Continuing, the lighting issues, so it's safe. Looking at the lighting plan, it just seems everything's on one side, but maybe addressing what's going on in the parking lot itself. I am sure that you've actually seen the Conservation Commission notes. It'd be great if we could actually look at a few trees, not on the perimeter of the parking lot, but in the parking lot itself.
And it's actually what the regulations require, but I think they know that.
And I think actually we talked a lot about the crosswalk and really trying to make that safe, in a dark evening environment. I think the same thing actually is the far end between the end of the parking lot and the playing fields across the street. There's no significant or serious crosswalk there. I think that'd be a safe thing to take a look at. Mr. Siciliano, is there any kind of a event schedule that's been established, or any kind of programming for the building, just so we can kind of get an understanding of the hours of operation, that kind of thing?
Well, we don't have an exact event schedule, but we are going to take some back after we do the construction. Obviously, we're going to retrofit some of those programs that we currently house in that building. The program schedule basically would be, roughly 8 a.m. to most likely 10 p.m. unless there's a special event going on. And that's pretty much our schedule right now. We would continue that seasonally, but sometimes it operates 7 days a week like that. And sometimes it's an abbreviated, especially during the summer months where we're not running that many weekend activities that late in the evening. So, but we currently run 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week, except for some various weekends in the summer when we're only running daytime activities at the center.
Okay, so would it be similar to the Bentheim Center, or maybe even a little bit expanded to that?
Excuse me, I missed your comment.
Would it be similar to the Bentheim Center, the Reston Civic Center? Maybe augmented, but it would be similar to that?
Yes, it would be, yes.
But
Okay.
Is there any way that you could give us something in writing that told us kind of what activities, what times of day, how many events like you would do? You already know all this, but you're also thinking about expanding it. So and doing things for which you could generate income, you mentioned. So what kinds of things are you envisioning? How often would they happen? Just so we get a sense of the use, the hours, the frequency, the number of people, and what the parking demand is going to be, because right now we don't have enough information on all of that.
Yeah, we can put something typical together. I mean, obviously, we don't know we're anticipating attracting new people in the future, but
Yeah.
based on our historical information and what we think we can attract, we could do something like that.
You're kind of looking at having 80 yoga classes and 40 skating, whatever you're going to do, but kind of what you're thinking of doing, what the use is going to be like in the building, and the special events. I guess the junior league would come back.
Yeah, we can do something generic for you so that you can have a kind of a perspective of what would be there.
Katie, how would that be for our record? I'm trying to get to something that really creates a good record for us, and having reviewed something this large is it something generic? It should be okay, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we did for the Byron Pool also. I mean, that when Joe says he's going to submit something generic, he's actually going to submit something quite specific.
Okay. All right. So he doesn't mean, when he says general and generic, he means very specific and detailed. That sounds good. Okay. So yeah, so we're on the same page. It's just kind of what we did for the Byron Pool. That would work out great.
Right. And Joe, that's what you were thinking, right? I mean, I think you can do the same type of thing here based on historic information.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
fine.
I don't think you've ever had a parking issue, but that's one of the things we're going to have to sign off on eventually. I don't think you've got a parking problem, but just to get a sense of how many people are going to be coming in and out, and whether or not with the big parking across the street and how that works, because it's got to, as you guys pointed out, it's got to meet our regs.
I mean, it seems that the parking problems, the far and few between ones that have been there, have all been from outside groups not managing the coming and goings of various teams, as opposed to something that was mismanagement on the town's behalf, so to speak. Is that fair to say, Joe? I mean, that's been my experience, just anecdotally.
Yeah, we it sometimes has to do with the crossover of events or field use that's going
Sure.
on.
Right.
But when we have events, larger scale events, such as shows and such, we do require, as part of our permitting process, Parks and Recreation, for them to have traffic, somebody from police traffic, PD, there to manage the crosswalk and the traffic on Harding Road. So that's something we are familiar with. We've done it for years, and anticipate that we'll continue to do that in the future.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Manelli, props to your design team. I think the building, kind of the simple elegance, is where it's working really well. I have a question about something that was brought up in the conservation notes. We're talking about the electrical vehicle chargers. When those are installed in a public property, where does that electricity come from?
Comes from the town's meter. We're doing a pilot program right now at the town hall, and we're hooking it up we're going to be putting one hopefully in the town hall parking garage, and it's hooked up to the meter that supplies electricity to that parking garage. And then what happens is the town can set the rate. There's a software program that's built into the EV charging station. So it lets EV users know where their charging stations are located, and what's the going rate. It's similar to a gas station putting out, the gas is 205.9. And then when they use their credit card, because it would be activated by a credit card, they would put it in, activate the machine. The cost gets directed for the electricity right back to my account, because I pay the electricity bills for Eastern or for the parking deck.
Right, so actually they're paying for it almost like a parking meter.
In essence, the electricity is paid by the user.
Right,
Great.
like a parking meter kind of situation. Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, Mr. Manelli, Mr. Siciliano, how do you feel about turning to public comment right now, or do you want to add?
Well, do you want to go? Let me ask you a question. Do we want to look at the building at what we submitted?
I think you should. I don't have a presentation. I didn't receive a presentation from you, but if you've got something to share, it would be terrific. Pat, do you have their presentation?
I mean, we have what was in the staff report.
Mr. Manelli, do you have it in, can you share it? Do you want to? Or do you want Pat to do the pages from the staff report?
Pages from the staff report are fine, because I believe, Pat, there's a drawing C1.10.
Mm-hmm.
If you could show that first.
C 1.00?
No, C 1.10.
10. Thank you.
Mr. LaRoe, it's on page 115 of the staff report.
Yeah, but if it goes through the full agenda.
Yeah, I'm going back to the plans. That'll be easier.
In the binder. So if it's in the binder that was provided. Yeah, I have it on page 29 of the binder.
So this is the site plan, the proposed, up. Could you go up one, Pat? One or two?
Yep.
One more. One more. One more.
No, that's the beginning of the set here. Sorry. Maybe it's a different binding set.
Go, so you can go back. We could use this one. There it is, right there. Perfect.
Thank you.
So this is the site. If you look, Harding Road is running up north to south on the paper, up and down, and Forest Road is coming in from the left side on an angle. You can see the existing drop-off and pickup lane that's going to be retained, and the new building basically is a square right in the middle. As you go down Harding Road towards Tomac, there's a new entrance into the site with some parking for ADA parking and generalized parking with its own drop-off and pickup loop at the rear of the building. And you can see the tennis courts and existing playgrounds are going to be retained. Right where your hand is now, Patrick, if you lower it down a little bit in that, that is the rear exit of the building that allows people to leave the building and take a left and come out towards the playing field. And on the far corner of the building is the outside toilets in that corner right there where you were before, Patrick, straight back right there. The toilets are part of the building. The outdoor toilets are part of the building and secured from the building with masonry walls. The parking lot across Harding Road, the chain link fence, the prison-like look of that parking lot is going to change. We're going to go with wood highway rails, and the storm water that's collected from rainstorms is not going to be directed to Harding Road. It's going to come down the parking lot and enter a retainage pond at the corner of Forest, a new retention pond at the corner of Forest and Harding Road, and it'll be piped out to the open culvert along the railroad tracks. All the building water from the roof and its gutters and the parking lots that are not pervious pavement or impervious pavement will be directed to there are two retainage ponds that'll be on the property. One right where the word Tomac, right in from the word Tomac Avenue, right up a little bit, and now to your right. Right in there. And the second one will be just south of the tennis courts in the back. So when we were talking about trees in the parking lot, Katie, when Joe provides that information to you about operating times and schedules, similar to the pool, we have a worst case occupation rate for the building. So like if the event space was used as an auditorium seating event, they would not necessarily schedule another event like that in the gym. The gym would be used for sports activity at that time, and the activity rooms would be filled. So we have a rough occupancy count for that. But when we talk about the parking spots, we're adding parking to the south of the building now. We're adding 30 spaces. And the big lot is going to be reduced to 205 from 215. We can look at putting islands on the end of all those parking lines so we can put some trees in. But that might come at the cost of some parking spaces.
Okay.
Okay.
We're gonna have to make it, we're gonna have to figure it out.
Yep. So if we want to flip to drawing, if you go back into the package, we can go to the floor plan, A1.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick, page 40.
Okay, right,
back.
Goodbye.
That's it. One more.
One more. There you go. So the main entry is at the bottom of the page, and you'll come into a airlock, a glass vestibule airlock, and there'll be, as soon as you walk into the space on your right, there'll be a waiting area for kids to wait for their parents, and that will be the administrative function at the front of the building. And then there'll be a control desk right after that. That'll give directions to different programs, what's available, what's going on. One of the big spaces, one of the big things that the Civic Center supports is the summer camps. So we put a camp office in with a small first aid area. And then as to the left of the front doors is the gymnasium that will support full-size basketball, half-court basketball, volleyball, pickleball. It supports a variety of things, badminton. The list just goes on and on. There's retractable seating in that gym, and that gym also has its own storage facility at the top of the gym. As we go back out into that main corridor, that corridor goes from the front of the building to the back of the building. Those are the main entrances to the building. There's a service corridor that goes out to the south parking lot. There's custodian space, storage space, the back door to the kitchen, the electrical room, the fire protection room, and eventually it comes out to a south door where there'd be a scissors type loading dock. It wouldn't be a dug-in loading dock. It'd be a surface loading dock with a retractable scissors lift. Coming back to the main corridor, we have centralized men's and ladies room. As you move up to the top of the page, we're starting to encounter the event space. That event space can support, as we talked about before, it could support a bunch of functions. They could support banquets, auditorium type seating. It could support sports activities. It could support soccer practice. We have a unique floor in that space. It's a cushioned wood floor with a vinyl top, wears very well.
Mr. Manelli, is that event space dividable?
Yes, there'll be a divider in that event space. And
thank you.
We're still discussing whether the gym could, and the gym will be divided. Yes, the gym will be divided also. Opposite the event space, we have a vending area and a little lounge space for parents to wait around for their kids. We have 2 family type restrooms. And then a storage area in the center for the activity rooms. So there's 3 activity rooms off that U-shaped corridor. The one to the left is 2 of the activity rooms, and there's a dividing wall there too. So it could be open to 100 people. If they're 49-person occupancy rooms, it could be open to, the 2 rooms could be open together for a large event or divided for 2 smaller events. And then there is an art room right next to the rear entranceway that'll have cabinets in it and a sink to support arts and crafts. As you leave the rear of the building and hang a left, there's the OGRCC offices and storage room with the private toilet. And then you have the exterior toilets for field activities, men's and ladies room, and everything is handicap accessible. There's a small staircase off the event space. The main heating and cooling equipment are on mezzanines above each half of the building. So the one on the right supported by a staircase and the one on the left is supported by a ladder. You want to go to the next slide, Patrick, please? These are the cross sections. The building is two intertwining curved roofs. And it's the bottom half is a masonry, a linear masonry block.
Mr. Manelli, is anybody from TSKP in?
Yeah, I believe so. Margarita, is Richard Sipek on?
Richard, yes, he just raised his hand.
There you go. Put him right on. Thank you, Nick. I was thinking about getting him on right now anyways.
You wanted to be rescued, huh?
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Hi, my name is Richard Sipek with TSKP Studio. And with me here in our office is Randall Luther, my partner. He's the designer on the project. And then Peter Cassidy behind us. He's the project manager. So we would love to show you the renderings because building elevations such as this are a distortion. No one ever sees the building in this form. So if we could continue the presentation with the next pictures. Keep going.
Wrong way, Patrick.
The other direction.
Patrick, try page 20.
To this set here, I'll have to bring up the other set then.
Patrick, if you're in the binder set, I believe it's page 14.
Yeah, they're in portrait mode, and I have to turn them here.
Okay, well done. This is good. So this vantage point is from the front of the building. As you approach the building, this is what you would see. As Mr. Manelli indicated, right in the center, you can see the entrance to the building. This is the western entrance. And this leads to the main corridor that divides the major spaces. On the left side would be the gymnasium, and on the right side in the rear would be the multi-purpose space. The glass area that you see to the right of the entrance is where the administrative offices are, and there's also a window for people to pick up their beach passes. The building is composed of masonry. This is a cast stone, similar to a Roman brick in size. And above it is aluminum windows and glass. The glass is a high performance glass so that it's very, very energy efficient. And as you can see, the form is really two curvilinear roofs that bypass each other. And that's what makes this building quite striking and quite unique. I think the wave forms of the roofs What we said when we were initially interviewed for the project are reminiscent of waves that you would see on the Sound. And I think that had a lot of appeal to people that we presented to. I'm going to ask Randall to jump in if I'm missing anything here, but we could continue to the next slide.
Well, I guess one quick comment. You will see, we did this rendering two ways, one with and one without photovoltaic panels. And we know this has been a comment that you've received. And so when you see the dark areas on the roof on the right are PV panels, what they would look like, at least our vision of what they would look like if the town went ahead at a later time with a power purchase agreement.
Which elevation would you like to go to next?
I'm not sure what you have next. Whatever you have next.
Well, they're all separated out, so east, west, north.
Oh.
We can go to the western side. I'm sorry, the eastern side.
I don't have an eastern. I have a west view, a northwest view, and a southern view.
Northwest.
Okay, this is the northwest view of the building, and you can see from this view the rear entrance to the building. So the glass areas that you see to the right are of the multi-purpose rooms, the art room, as well as the OGRCC office. That's in the area to the extreme right. What you don't see is just beyond to the right of this picture would be the entrances to the restrooms that would be for the purpose of serving the people using the multi-purpose fields. In the background, you can see the roof covering the multi-purpose space within the building. In the foreground, you can see just a hint at a playground area which wouldn't be changed. You see planted areas alongside the building, and you see also a grassy area just outside that multi-purpose space. And what we envisioned is the possibility of having tents placed on that grassy field if you have a large event that could be held outdoors. It would be a perfect spot. And this would be near that drop-off circle in the far distance and the service drive also around the corner. Anything else you want to point out?
No, I mean, I think Richard summarized it pretty well. The one thing about the roof that we were really trying to do is to kind of make it float. It's such an important piece. So, you know, we mentioned that the walls below are kind of a masonry. They're sort of visually heavy and physically heavy. And then to really contrast that, the roof is you know, white, it's very light. And we want it just to almost feel like a tent when you're inside. That all the spaces, there's a lot of glass between them, and you can see in between a lot of the spaces. So you feel like it's one giant building inside with certain degrees of separation to really emphasize the word sort of community and community center.
So we hope these pictures convey a sense of what this building will look like and the materials that we would be using to compose the building. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have about the plan or about the exterior.
I have a question about the storefront and the multi-purpose room. I think there was a comment from an email today questioning whether questioning that storefront. If there's activity in that multi-purpose room, is that storefront in the way? Can it create a problem? Is there any risk to the glass there?
Sure, you're wondering about any kind of running around and kicking balls and whatnot. So we do have the ability to have operable panels slide in front of those curtain walls, behind those glass walls, to protect the walls. So we have thought about that, and that would be something that's developed during the details of this project. But you can see that the composition on the outside is solid wall as well as glass wall. So we could have sliding panels tucked away alongside the solid walls and then slide them in front of the glass walls to protect the glass walls.
Thank you.
Coming back to I mean, the building looks impressive. We have to get into it more, obviously, but the 10 idea provokes something in me that taking stuff outside, it doesn't look to have a lot of enclosed offices in the building. There's some, it looks, but not a lot, right? Most of it's open with high ceilings, curved high ceilings.
No, there are smaller spaces as well. So the multi-purpose rooms, each of which could house 50 occupants, or they could be opened up into larger rooms. They do have ceilings. They're not large open spaces. We also have offices in the front of the building.
If you go to A3, you can see that.
Yeah, so
where I'm going with this is COVID-19. Hopefully it goes away, but if it doesn't, those 50 people may become 20 or something. Have you guys given any thought to, I mean, what's the impact on this building? Maybe there's nothing. Maybe we've got it cured and everything goes away, but there's been a lot of talk about enclosed spaces, airflow, filters, stuff like that. Is there any?
Yeah. It's a very, very good question. It's a question that's on the mind of a lot of our clients, and we do a lot of public buildings in our practice. And the key is really to move air a lot and to have very good ventilation systems. And there are techniques that are used today to incorporate features in the ducts, for instance, ultraviolet lighting, which can kill certain bacteria and viruses. That is a technique that's currently being used in a lot of new ductwork. Also, what we were able to do is create a charge, a positive and negative charge across the ductwork, which will attract, just like static electricity attracts particles. We can pick up all those particles in the air, as well as provide HEPA filters within the ductwork. So since this project has the benefit of a new mechanical system, we can incorporate all those kinds of techniques that are currently being used in public facilities to try to mitigate all of the viruses and particulates in the air.
But you're not that far enough along yet because of the stage of the building, I assume.
That's correct. The building is at the schematic design stage. We've designed it enough so that you understand what it would look like and how big it would be on the site, but we certainly have not designed to any great detail the mechanical systems, other than knowing where the components would be placed. The details of the mechanical system still have to be developed.
I thought it was brilliant that you provided for tents outside if he keeps going, you know?
Yeah, actually, we have a high school project that was done a few years ago, and we have designed it in such a way so that there is an open courtyard adjacent to the cafeteria, and the superintendent is looking at putting a tent specifically for that purpose.
Mr. Spizek, the multi-purpose room with that window, looking at the rendering in the plan, I think, you know, I love how it breaks up the heaviness of the proposed masonry. I think as you're going more in the schematic design, that elevate's great, especially if you could apply it to the south facade as well, because I think that's actually kind of a new entry, if you would, to the site with the circle in the back. I love that, you can actually see as from the pedestrian level into the space and see the activity that's in there. I know even to the end of the gymnasium on the west side, if it's possible even to do one there as well. Because I think actually seeing activity in the building from the street would be a real benefit to everything.
I agree. I think it would lend a lot of excitement.
So I'm not too sure if you could do it in the administration areas, although, I, for one, if the boiler pump room is actually kept clean, it's kind of an interesting thing to see from the outside. But again, the glass going to the floor is, an idea. And I think actually, in the evening, when people are here and they're leaving, it actually gives it a little bit more life to the building as well.
I agree.
Curious, this is your current plan. Was there anything that you were kind of thinking about you'd like to have in this community center for Greenwich that somehow got dropped because of whatever the reason, the size? I don't mean little things, but is there some kind of a space that you folks, because you've got this clever roof, I see it, I see the workspace, I see the ceilings and what you're doing. Was there anything else that was kicked around that just like, listen, we can't keep, we don't want to build bigger. We have budget issues, so we don't want to bid, but there was something you had to give up to do what you've done?
No, I don't think so. I think the program that we were given was quite well thought out. It's a very practical program. The spaces were defined quite well. When we started planning the building, even before we were retained, we saw that everything could fall into place quite nicely. So no, I can't see what we would add. I think it would be unnecessary. I think this is a very well designed, very efficient building, and it satisfies your needs, I think, perfectly. I think it fits the bill perfectly.
And we're going to see the choices that you all made in the proposal. Mr. Manelli, Mr. Siciliano, we're going to see kind of how you had to hone it down over time, and that'll help answer that question. I think that's kind of what you were getting at, Dennis. What was the big wish list and where did it end up? Because one of the things is, I think it's also a really useful piece of information for us as we update our POCD. What did residents ask you for that wasn't feasible now, but that we should keep in mind for the future and we should be recommending for the future? So I'm just putting on the planning hat for that. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to know how you went through that process of the trade-offs. Are you guys ready to turn this over to public comment? I know we've got a lot of people here, and okie doke.
Yes.
I know Mr. Berg has his hand up, so here you go, Mr. Berg. And anybody else who wishes to speak, if you would kindly raise your hands, and then I'll just take you in sequence as we go. So just raise your virtual hand. I always forget to say that it's virtual. Mr. Berg, you're still muted. Okay.
How about now?
Okay, there you go. Congratulations. That's great.
Yes, thank you so much. So I just want to, sorry about that.
It's all right. Barking dogs, it's the reality of the Zoom world.
So I was very, very pleased, Ms. Albin, when you started by asking for the survey results. I expected to see the survey results as part of the MI application.
Right.
And they're not there. As you know, MI approval, MI is a planning approval. And under our charter, section 99, it clearly says that no action shall be taken other than studies and surveys until MI status is granted. And this project appears to have gone well beyond, hold on a second. just it looks like, looking at all these beautiful pictures, this project has gone well beyond just studies and surveys. But a major decision was made in this project that it is just a replacement, essentially just a replacement of the existing building. And we've heard that the surveys showed that many residents wanted something more. We know that many residents are traveling outside of town in order to get the services that could be provided at this site. Certainly, there's a tremendous amount of additional FAR that could be put on this site. I'm thinking about Chelsea Piers that, I don't think that was even existed when this project was first started. But that's one facility that has revealed a huge market. And many Greenwich residents go there, take their children there, but that's just one of many such facilities. So my request of the commission is to not just ask for the survey and not just append it, but to look at the survey.
Oh, no, that's the intent. Trust me. All 150 pages.
Yeah. And sure. And, decide for yourself if the scope of this project is too narrow. And, the commission isn't driven by project budgets. And, this is probably a building that will be here for 50 years. And it doesn't look like something that you can easily add on to. So my request is, yes, look at the survey, decide whether or not this was the appropriate scope, and without concern about budget, decide whether or not this is the right building for Greenwich.
And we were actually thinking of it another way, which is, as you know, we're going to update the POCD routinely and not look at it every 10 years. And what might come out of what they couldn't do right now in the Civic Center would be a set of priorities to put into an updated POCD, that this is the input they got. It wasn't realistic for this project, but this is the kind of thing the town should be looking at going forward, and that the loop goes into the POCD and we go back to people and say, here's the stuff that they couldn't do, but this is what we should be looking at doing because people are asking for it. So Mr. Siciliano was very diplomatic, as was Mr. Manelli, and they didn't say, oh, we really wished we could do all of that. We just said it wasn't realistic, but we need to hear that. We need to know what the future should have in it for Greenwich, what they heard. Yes, Mr. Delabate.
I just want to point out to let Mr. Berg know that this particular committee, although the Civic Center has been talked about being built for years and years and years, this particular committee was formed in 2018, long after Chelsea Piers was already there, and that certainly was a consideration what Chelsea Piers is serving already. So I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that.
I'd like, if I may, just suggest something. Someone alluded to this earlier, that there were kind of two things going on here. One in the back of people's minds was this was an opportunity at a time when we might be able to get something done, but that there were inherent budgetary constraints that had to be acknowledged. And that, along with the fact that this committee took all the input from the various people around town, and they were able to sort of distill it down and say, well, wait, that's an idea, and that might have expanded the project, but that may not have had the level of support that other things did. And I got the impression that there was a distillation process.
Yes.
That these committees went on, whereby certain suggestions were evaluated, and it was decided that regardless of budget or because of budget, we shouldn't continue with them, or that the demand was such a little pocket of interest on the part of a small percentage of the community that it did not warrant more serious consideration. So if I'm wrong about that, I'd like to hear that, but perhaps we ought to hear, that balancing act and what was factored in.
Yeah, that's what we're asking for.
Right.
That's exactly what you just said, Mr. Lowe, is what I asked for at the beginning of the discussion.
But
Mr.
the point is well taken, which is that we, the Planning and Zoning Commission, can only look at what's put before you.
Right.
And if the people that come before you, meaning the BET, who funded the 30% of this project, which is the studies and surveys, by the way, and then further the Board of Selectmen, who's moved it forward. I mean, this is what the commission is reviewing, and if one wanted to challenge the decision and say it should be including a pool, or it should have this or that or what other, then there's a process for that too. But this is where we are.
Right. I think that we're also looking at, but again, it's whether it meets the primary goals of the current POCD, and that's what we're trying to get to, and whether or not we should update our POCD for stuff that got heard. I just want to know that. Okay, so the next speaker would be Francia Alvarez. And here you go, ma'am. And you should be ready to go.
Unmute.
Oops.
Oh, there you go.
There she is. Hi. Okay, good.
How are you?
I believe you sent something in
Yeah.
for Patrick to do a screen share.
Yes, that would be great.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Okay, so the Greenwich Tree Conservancy has a few items that we would like to reflect on that are in the POCD. We like to look at the big picture and considering this property and its relationship to the abutting railroad, our right of way. So I can see the first slide. There we go. Okay, you can change slides, please. So this happened in June of this year. I was taking a ride on Tomac and came across that the railroad was cutting down all the trees along the tracks in their right of way. It was a considerable number of trees, and it goes all the way back to those trees that are in the far distance in the center of the picture. You could change, please. So this is a photo of the area today. You can change again. There is no longer a buffer of plantings and any visual screening that's provided to protect from the noise of the trains passing through Old Greenwich in this area. Change again. You can see the railroad bridge here with the wide open sky and the massive catenary poles. Change again. And what the town really needs to put in here are additional trees in this area. Can change again. You can see all of these existing trees that are along the property line, approximately along the property line of the Civic Center. You can change again. There's from another angle, you can see that there's many of them. You can change one more time. And this is the back of the Civic Center. So you can see that these trees do provide at least some screening to the railroad tracks. I would like to note at this time that there are many families with small children that would be parking in this parking lot in the back. And it would be important to provide a fence along that area, along the property line for safety at the rear of the building. You can change again. So the site plan shows that there's going to be a removal of 19 trees, of which 16 trees are along that area where the trees have also come down in the right of way for the railroad. So that's in the lower half of this picture. So that would be the southern border. And so we're assuming that the town tree warden has been involved in this plan, and if it goes forward, that there would be a tree hearing on these trees. Can change again. If you look at the landscape plan, which does not provide for a necessary buffer and screening requirements, removing these 19 trees will have a significant impact on this property in the loss of screening, visual screening, and from the railroad, and loss of water absorption by the trees. In addition, there is a spatial separation that needs to be considered. What type of, in addition, the trees that are supposed to be planted, there's a little bit of a confusion on it because the legend doesn't seem to be correct. It mentions a tree that's a UP, but that is not in the legend. So I'm not sure what kind of trees are supposed to be replacing the trees that are going to be removed.
What's that?
There will be 28 trees that are added, but there doesn't seem to be many in this southern area of the property. It's lacking there. You can change again. Thank you. Repaving this parking lot provides an opportunity to have a treed lot. This is a commitment that the town of Greenwich and the Greenwich Tree Conservancy and their private-public partnership have agreed upon. And in fact, the Horsenet parking lot in downtown Greenwich is a perfect example of the greening of town parking lots. Also, these existing trees look like they will need a bit of care and feeding due to the parking lot construction. There is a goal to provide shade and for protection of pedestrians and vehicles, and 1 shade tree for every 10 cars. So it'd be important that we meet those goals that are in our regulations and what the POCD is looking to accomplish. Can change again. This parking lot abuts private homes on Brown House Road, and this would be the time to add additional privacy screening as needed, which is not shown in the preliminary plans. You can change again. And that's the last slide, Patrick. Thank you so much. And finally, the metal fence here should be considered for replacing or repair. In summary, the loss of 16 trees on the southern portion of the property will have a significant effect both visually and ecologically. Adding in the loss along the railroad right-of-way will change this area for years to come and significantly detracts from the neighborhood character. The Greenwich Tree Conservancy hopes that you will consider these concerns as you move forward. Thank you.
There's one thing that's not in the regulations yet, Mr. Manelli, and in terms of POCD implementation, which is that we want to have more buffer between a non-residential use and a residential. So where you do adjoin those residences, it would be good to, we would be very grateful for you to consider the screening. Our regulation 6180, our landscape regs do require, as Ms. Alvarez pointed out, 1 tree for every 10 cars in the parking lot. But if in addition, and Katie can talk to you more about it, but it's in the POCD as one of our tasks that we're gonna thicken up the buffer between schools and houses. So anytime you're looking at that, as you're looking at those kinds of things, just as a heads up that it's something residents really wanted to have, is a little bit more protection of their privacy. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Alvarez?
I actually have a question for Mr. Manelli.
Okay.
Ms. Alvarez had pointed out actually the southern property line there and the open spaces. From reading the landscape plan, it looks like there's 2 large rain gardens there.
Yeah.
Okay, and there's one at the southern line of the parking lot as well.
Yes, so there's one closer to Tomac, and that will eliminate 6 trees. And the one further back, there's a possibility that it could remove 2 additional trees, but we're trying to alter that slightly with the site engineer to try to save those 2 trees. So along that southern line, we're only looking, right now, they're calling for 8, but we're trying to keep it to 6. And the 6 would be lost closer to Tomac, where the large retention pond is there. We're looking at, right now, speaking of trees on the site, We have the 6 that we just spoke about, possibly 2 towards the tennis courts, but again, we're trying to work that out. We have 2 on the north side of the building, 3 adjacent to the front of the existing building. When the existing building is demolished, the roots are in the foundation and they won't be able to be saved. We have 1 cluster tree at the rear of the building. It was in one of the pictures Ms. Alvarez showed. And I did have the tree warden was out there with me, and he suggested that tree be taken down because it's going to fall down. And we have 1 dead tree on Harding Road. We have a bunch of small trees that are small caliber 2-inch trees or under, that are going to be relocated on the site, as well as added trees. And again, this is a preliminary site plan, and we're taking everybody's comments and we will add them.
Yeah.
Especially like the parking lot, and trying to get some kind of buffer along that southern boundary line. There's a right of way, believe it or not, along that southern boundary. So you have the railroad property, which that open culvert and the trees that were removed was done by Metro North. Then there's a right of way between the edge of that open culvert and the row of trees that goes to a rear property on the other side of that brook back there. So we were retaining that right of way. So planting in that would obstruct the right of way, but again, we will do everything we can about planting some more trees there.
Yeah, and you're going to get input from wetlands at the end of the month, correct?
Yes, yes.
And you're going to go to ARC, is it tomorrow?
Yeah.
So you're going to get input from both wetlands and ARC. I was kind of holding back a little bit on the planting and the screening for that reason, because
Okay.
you're going to, and ARC's been working with us on all this POCD stuff, so you're going to hear the same kind of thing.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
We have one more speaker. It's Victoria Quake. Ma'am, if you would unmute, you can go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. I'm Victoria Quake. I'm an old Greenwich resident, and I have active kids who've used the Civic Center a lot. The building looks incredible, and I'm really excited for this new project. I have to say, though, that the missing link and the appeal of the Chelsea Piers and all of that, I think personally would really be solved by paying attention to the fields once this construction project is finished, and really making sure that we get the funds in the capital budget to address field reconstruction in some fashion once this gorgeous building is finished. And that's all I just wanted to add.
If I could jump in, Victoria.
Sure.
I feel exactly the same way.
Figured you did.
I wish we could do both of these at once. It's a lot of money, but once this is done, I would love to get something done with those fields next door. So I hear you loud and clear.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you so much for taking my call.
And you do have someone from the BET listening, so hopefully they'll keep your wishes in mind. Candace Garthwaite, you have your hand up. Hold on a second. There you go. All right, Ms. Garthwaite, if you would go ahead. And that should be the last of our speakers.
Hi, hello, thank you.
Hi.
Hello. So thank you for the presentation. And, I agree that the buildings do look quite stunning. I am concerned that, it doesn't look like there's room for expansion. This is a very large piece of property, which is difficult in town to have. And so in meeting the needs of the community, we would want to make plans, if we're going to be going 50 or 70 years out into the future, of really looking at how we might even maximize this large space for the future. So that's one thing. And then secondly, I'm a little confused about the solar aspect, or the more green energy aspect of the building. I know that over time, the town has maybe not had good experiences with solar, but I would imagine that those technologies have improved. And so I would just like to understand that a little bit more. And also, I know there were operational costs that were taken into consideration, and I'm assuming that's why the building does not have a second floor.
Ma'am? Mr. Manelli, do you want to hit those questions for us, please?
Yeah, let me take the second one first. The goals that the committee voted on was accomplished all on a single floor. So there was no need for a second floor. And for the solar, a number of town projects have had solar panels put on them. Solar panels do break. They're not perpetual. And the maintenance, there is no maintenance agreement, or the town's maintenance staffs are not equipped to deal with the solar panels. So in looking at other communities and other towns in the state and what they've done, they've gone to these PPA agreements where they bring a third party in that makes the investment in the panels and pays the town for the use of the roof. And they produce the power that goes back out into the grid. And then we don't have to worry about maintaining the panels. You know, to make the panels have to output 100% all the time to make the goal of what you're accomplishing with that square footage on that roof. So you want to make sure that they're always functioning. So you're always going to need somebody standing by to maintain the panel or replace the panels, which could get quite expensive.
The person who went away and is no longer got their hand up, who wanted to speak, they mentioned the energy efficiency conservation. I know the issue, and I know the conservation department tried to get an energy commission formed in town. I think that's why you're being asked the question. Have we done the most we can to be sustainable? And that's really the question you're being asked. And if you're saying, yes, we've done everything else, but the solar panels just didn't make sense to us at this point in time.
Well, no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that the economics of the solar panels for the town to purchase them
Don't make sense.
Opportunities. So the building will be designed. It's just not reinforcing the roof structure to hold solar panels. The electrical system within the building has to be designed to accept solar energy, and we're doing that as part of the project.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, and I mean, I've heard that because I know that the town's looking for a payback period of under 5 years on that kind of an investment, and I don't think solar's there yet. But I'll let the BET address that, not our business. Okay, so that's Ms. Garthwaite. Does that answer your questions?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So I think that's it for the public comment. And with that, you're going to go off, and Mr. Yeski, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to add one concept because we struggled with this in the POCD, looking at what the public is telling you and then balancing.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, that was a huge thing, and I'm looking forward to the survey, and you said it. One thought, though, to throw in the hopper here is that one of the concepts we stuck in the POCD was Greenwich is not an island. We rely on our neighbor communities to provide services. We were looking at housing, for example, and retail. We rely on Portchester for big boxes. We don't want big boxes in town. We rely on Stanford for high rises. We don't want high rises. The Chelsea Piers, I don't know everything that's over there, but I hope that, you can't have everything they have, but maybe we don't really need it short term. So remember in the POCD, we have a paragraph talking about complementary to other neighboring towns. And we're dealing with this in regional planning now too, that, there are things we want. We want the best. We want to be Greenwich, but there are some things that doesn't make sense. And we've got a neighboring town, or in this case, a neighboring facility that will provide those services. So that I'll be curious to see the surveys and everything and how it got balanced out. But we dealt with it and came up with, we don't want a big box. We don't want a high rise. So hopefully that'll help in this analysis.
Right. Mr. Siciliano.
Just to follow up on that comment, that's a great observation because the survey does address other amenities such as swimming pools, ice rinks, other things of that nature that were on this list. And it gives the drive time from Greenwich to those locations and what are those amenities about. So such as Chelsea's Piers is listed, other opportunities that are in the neighboring community that our community could use. So it's in the study. You'll see it.
Okay, great.
Okay, great. Anybody else from the commission? I think we've kind of scattered our guidance in terms of the evening, but I think, go ahead, Mr. Levy.
Yes, I just wanted to, I didn't remember if there was actually an outdoor basketball court there in the back or not. But it seems like that's not on the plan now. And I was wondering if that was an oversight or if there was any thought about that.
Gentlemen?
They're, to the best of my knowledge, sitting here right now, because we have so many facilities, I don't think there is a basketball court there. There may have been a stray basketball hoop, but I'm not sure it's in place at the moment.
Right. It seems to me that that would be something to consider. And I was curious about the retention pond next to Tomac. It seems to me that maybe there could be some consideration to moving it slightly, or so that we didn't have to touch those trees there. It's a good place to have trees, but anyway, I just thought that if there was anything you could do to reconsider how the configuration of that particular retention area.
Speaking of a balancing act, this whole site is a balancing act.
Because of the wetlands.
In trying to meet the town's storm water quality manual and the retention ponds and put the replacement goals of the building in. We're removing impervious pavement areas like at the rear of the building and putting grass in to lessen the load on the drainage system. This is not an easy area to be dealing with. We're trying to keep the fields operational. I know Mr. McRae asked me for a construction phase plan. It is going to be very dynamic because we don't need to take the entire parking lot at the start of construction. So we can leave some parking for the fields. But as we go through things like this, we're balancing what is available to us and what we can do to meet all the other regulations. So we're putting, parking, the one tree per every 10 cars, we'll plant along the border, but putting islands in is going to detract from parking. And that's that balancing act again. And we're going to try to accomplish everything you guys want.
And
but
maybe
I think the beautification of effect of breaking up the asphalt with planting areas and or trees is worth great consideration, and will make the experience there much more special and make it feel like you're in Greenwich. We don't need vast open asphalt parking areas, which are something that looks a little dated and is certainly not as environmentally friendly. But the experience that you want to have when you come to a town facility is that it's special. So I think that the idea that you would add trees in the parking lot or any other kind of green elements is a very good and important idea to incorporate.
And I agree. I definitely agree. But again, it's a balancing act, the whole project.
Right.
So this is the thing, Mr. Manelli, exactly to what you said. We got to get to that balancing act number, because on the one hand, you need to have enough parking for when you have the events.
Yep.
And we could waive some of your parking requirement, but none of it's going to mess you up when you're having events, because the whole idea of having the Civic Center is to have events. So we've got to strike that balance. And that's why we're asking you bottom line, that's why we're both asking you for the schedule, and for another reason that we keep saying, tell us about what else you considered, what you honed it down to, et cetera, so that we can be a player in that balancing act, because we have a role in that as well. I think that makes, and that's really, I think at the end of the day, that's the most important piece of feedback we can give you tonight. You heard huge praise for the architects, and for all the thought you've put into it, for the public input you've gotten, and just, some kind of issues for us to be able to get our arms around this, so we really have a deeper understanding.
And a lot of that credit goes to Scott Johnson and Gary for going out there. I mean, all the credit goes for that. I've been in contact with the tree warden. I've been in contact with Pat Sesto on energy and some of the wetland issues.
Great.
So where do you want us to go from here?
I think,
Margarita,
okay, yes, Andy.
I'm just going to comment. What we do with the golf clubs, we let them do overflow parking in the grass areas.
I know, I thought about that.
And I think they should take a look at that to make sure the parking lots are in balance and we're not creating too much asphalt parking when they have the fields that could accommodate overflow parking for big events in the evening.
I think that's a great idea. It's just that I know you also have a wetlands issue. I know you have areas of the soil there that get soggy, and you don't want to count on being able to park on the soggy places. Having used that facility when both the inside and the outside were soggy. Let me ask you guys this. For myself, I'd like to see the MI, I'd like to see that whole list, the trade-offs and the balancing and how you went about that. Given the fact that you're still going to go to before wetlands and you're going to go to ARC, my sense is you're getting positive feedback from the commission, but let's leave the preliminary open until you've got some of that very necessary input. Unless you have a reason, and unless somebody feels strongly, you're on enough of a good direction that we could close the preliminary, but we couldn't give you the MI. I'm not comfortable with the MI yet. Just because I'd like some more in the record before we move forward with it, that we can actually say, hey, this is consistent with a POCD. It feels good, but I'd like to have a little more. So
I want to make sure that the preliminary can get through wetlands too, before you react on the MI.
That's pretty much what I was thinking. So those are the thoughts. So I think the best thing would be, you've gotten a lot of positive feedback tonight, and just to move forward, you guys move forward with this and come back as soon as you're ready to come back, because we don't want to hold you up. If this is making sense all around, we'd like you to keep going.
You could do that.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's been more than, what did we say, 10 years, 15 years?
20.
20, yeah, it feels more like 20.
It was the first assignment I got when I became the new director in 1999.
There you go. So it's been a long time. I
It'll
thought
be the
it,
last one.
yeah, it's been a while, and it is really you kind of flinch a little bit when you drive by. So, so it's exciting that we're going to get something new and it's going to work for the community. Does anybody else want to throw anything in?
I just commend everybody who's been involved in this. It's been a long
haul,
very complicated process. I've witnessed some of it, but I think this task force, the input from the Riverside Association, OGRCC, and Kirk Schubert, I think it's just been spectacular, and the town will be very proud of what we end up with.
And the fact that you did so much public input and that you got so much buy-in, that what you're hearing is support, is just terrific. So if nobody else has anything else, come back to us whenever you're ready.
Okay.
I think if you get ARC and you get wetlands and then come back with all that input, you'll be good.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would like to get the survey information sooner versus later.
Yeah, if you're going to send us a lot of pages, just because you never know when we have a really big agenda, I'd love to see it soon. If you can just send us whatever you have on how you thought through the process and how you made the balancing act, it would be great.
Just send that to me, Alan, and I'll get it to the commission.
Actually, Joe has it, and I'm sure you'll need the committee reports too. 'Cause there was
And
some meetings talking about that.
and I mean, I would ser, and the parking, us to be able to do a parking analysis, that trade-off that we have to make on your behalf.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
all righty.
Thank you all.
Hey, thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thanks,
Thank you, guys.
I'll
It's
talk
been
to
a
you
pleasure.
tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Okay, so with that, the next two items have been postponed. And the last item for the evening is, and this was the meeting that was going to end at 7. I know Patrick Leroux is, you didn't really think it was going to go to 9 o'clock, did you?
Oh,
No.
well,
How could it?
But
seven,
luckily,
seven is not the number I would have put on it, but
in past defense, luckily we didn't take anything off as requested.
Yes, but no, we could have taken a couple of things off. Okay, so the next application I'm going to recuse for, so I'm going to, Mr. Yeski's going to be seated. If you guys need me, but I think you're done with me. I'm going to bag it now, and I'm leaving Mr. McRae to do it.
you don't have to say it with such joyous tone, by the way, Madam Chair, but.
Okay, Patrick, if you could bring up, I think it's
Mr. Tessie
Tessa.
should be here.
He's
I am
here.
here.
There
I
he
am
is,
here,
thank
I
you.
hope.
Okay, so this is Miller Partners, 321 LLC at 321 West Putnam. Mr. Tessier, at your convenience.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Macri, members of the commission. Hello again. And you're not going to 9 o'clock with me, I'll tell you. The application's a relatively simple one. I did listen to your staff briefing yesterday. The purpose of this application, as you, I think, all realize, is to construct an elevator and a little foyer, 2 stories, each story about 400 square feet at the rear of the building at 321, which has been approved for the use on its street level floor for a car dealership. And on the rear, in the basement, there is a detailing area. The parking for customers is in the rear. It's actually available, although for the type of cars that are sold, we never use them, up to 16 parking spaces available, 17 counting a handicap for the customers. Depending on where a particular customer parked, there is approximately 150 to almost 200, over 200 foot lengthy walk up an incline to get to the front door now, and it's proven to be, as you can appreciate, very problematic and basically impossible for anyone with any type of disabilities. So for all the right reasons in terms of safety and ADA complementing this proposal as before you today, it's this simple. As noted in Patrick's staff report, we have appeared before the Board of Appeals because we technically needed a variance due to the proximity of the building itself to the west property line of the property, not going beyond the limit of the existing building's proximity there. Ironically, if this were in a residential zone under section 6141, we wouldn't have needed it, but we happen to need it. And we also obtained a special exception, which is required under state law and under our regulations dealing with expansion, if you will, of a car dealership. As part of the conditions, or the condition of the Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals pursuant to a request of adjoining residential owners in the so-called Cotswells condominium complex located essentially to the east, there was an agreement to install a screening along 2 of the boundary lines. And that, as I said, is a condition that my client is okay with. They tried, and I think they've done a good job of always listening to neighbors when they spoke. We didn't know that there was a question or concern until I wrote the letter, and my client had no problem complying with what they asked for as a good neighbor. There was some question raised as to the offloading of vehicles. Miller Motor Cars, which is the occupant of the whole campus, if you will, there from 273 to 321 West Putnam Avenue for his various brands, has a significant facility on McGee Avenue in Stanford, which is a detailing and also service center. And that is for these particular brands where all the new cars first go. Originally, when we got the approvals for 273, I think it's 25 years ago or now, maybe longer, we did have a plan which we had to show under the regulations for a car carrier to actually come on site, which would have been right in front of the 273 building, and then go past the Aston Martin building and then swing out in the common driveway on the west side. That's really not necessary, but actually it is there and was approved, as I said, way back when in the, I think it was the 90s, maybe even the late 80s, probably in the 90s. So there's no intention to have that at all, even a regular basis. Regularly, I doubt it. The cars will basically make their way, the new cars will make their way to the campus by way of a flatbed, or will actually be driven from the Stanford facility. We do not have ARC review yet. I think insofar as code landscaping is concerned, I can tell you we've retained Craig Studer to essentially design the plan for the screening. As you probably all know and realize, there isn't much landscape on the property except in the rear. There's a wetland to our rear, so we're limited to doing anything in there. The rear meaning the north, and to the east we have a bank that goes up, and it's actually part of it's in a conservation area for the Cotswolds. And so you've got a lot of vegetation in there. I don't know if anyone looked at any type of Google map, but you'll see that there's a heck of a lot of vegetation. One could argue, why do you need the screening? But I can think in the wintertime, perhaps there could be some view. As far as lighting, that was a question raised, and certainly we need to comply with the regulations as they pertain to lighting. And could see that myself as probably the only reason to go ARC. Our addition is, as you all know, behind the building, relatively small, but we'll leave it up to you to decide whether you could close this and hopefully approve it this evening, or whether you want to leave it open for ARC comments. We'd like to see it closed because our clients would like to get started on this project for all the reasons I told you at the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tessie. Any comments from the members?
No.
Okay. Any comments from the public? Okay. Moving on. Understanding we've got pretty much everything here except for ARC. I think that we might be able to actually close this and make the zoning permit subject to ARC review.
Fine with me.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yep.
Okay.
Will that be, Mr. Macri, will that be for full review, just so I can tell the team, architecture?
I've got some notes here. I'll let you know right away.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so with that, should we make a motion?
Yes.
Okay, so all right, stuff here. Here it is. Okay, 321 West Putnam Avenue, application PLPZ 2020-323, final site plan special permit in the GB zone. Applicants requesting final site plan special permit to make an addition to the rear of the existing building. The installation of rear stairway, elevator, and lobby, reconfiguring the parking area on 34,000 square feet in the GB zone. Commission finds that the zoning office issued a memo dated 9/29/20 stating the proposal meets the requirements of the BZR. And the ZBA is granted with conditions special exception approval and side yard variances at their 9/23 meeting. Engineering, the applicant has filed a drainage exemption letter dated 7/29/20. Sewer Division has issued comments 9/16/20 indicating no comment. And Wetlands had issued a permit needs questionnaire dated 8/17/20 indicating no action required. Therefore, a motion to approve the site plan special permit with the following conditions. The ZBA approval was conditioned with the requirement the applicant appear before the ARC to review lighting and 7 to 8 foot arborvitae to be installed and maintained along the eastern and northern fence lines. Prior to issuance of the zoning permit, ARC to review all site lighting, the proposed required landscaping, and the signage at the front of the building. That was included on plans. The applicant is to abide by any and all requirements and conditions stated in the 7/6/16 and 10/17/17 site plan approvals. And the applicant is to address any outstanding staff or interdepartmental issues. Any comment?
Mr. Macri, is that, are we want to say anything specific as to, in addition to the ZBA decision with the landscaping, or just say, let that be the note to the ARC?
I think that's we can forward the ZBA decision to them as well. But I think what they're looking for is to get the proper arborvitae installed along those 2 fence lines, the proper distancing, the proper size, the proper spacing, that kind of thing.
So landscaping incorporating the ZBA decision.
Yeah, because I think it's my understanding, actually, most of that's paved in the back there. They may have to
You're right.
Do some additional work to make sure they can get the plants in, the trees. Okay, and then whatever site lighting they have, because it does abut the residences. And just actually going back to something we always talk about, I think actually this building's been around for a very, very long time. They've done a lot of good work on it, maintaining it. I want to make sure that they just don't, go hog wild with crazy signs. I think the building itself sells the cars themselves. I believe that the member of the design team is online, so I'm sure they'll do the right thing.
And did I hear you say exterior for going to ARC as well? Is that
No,
understood?
Just the signs. I don't think there's any change to the exterior other
So
than
the
the
list-
addition, but the addition works.
So the list is signage, lighting, landscaping, incorporating ZBA decision.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with
Second.
that, second, Mr. Fox. Okay, Mr. Yeski,
Aye.
Mr. Levy,
Aye.
Mr. Hardman.
Aye.
Who else do we have here?
Mr. Fox.
Mr. Fox.
will you second it. So that's everybody?
It is.
Yeah, great. Okay. So with that, I think we're done with this.
Thank you all.
And
Have a good
meeting.
evening.
Good night, Mr. Tetsi.
Night.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Night, Katie.
Good night, Katie. Anything else, Mr. LaRoe?
Not that I need. I'm well satisfied. Thank you.
Okay, then we're done for the evening. See you all next
Thank
week.
you, Mr. McRyan.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.